I'm divorcing my husband after he invited his ex for dinner and humiliated me. Now, everyone's saying I'm wrong for wanting out. We have a 4-year-old boy together, and Tom and I have been married for 5 years. He was an undergraduate and I was completing my master's degree when we first met in graduate school. I quit my job after getting married, but I had to go back to work when our baby was 6 months old since Tom's salary wasn't enough to support the 3 of us. Many arguments resulted from that choice since Tom believed it was disrespectful to him in some way and demonstrated my lack of confidence in his skills. I tried to persuade him for weeks that this was not related to his ability and that, in my opinion, 2 salaries would be preferable to 1. After he learned he could take some time off work to spend with our son, he finally warmed up to me after being angry with me for a long. The drawback was that I ended up doing all of the housework in addition to my job. Tom says his job is more physically demanding than mine because he works as a personal trainer at a nearby gym. He believes that since I work from a desk, I should take care of the majority of the housework. Despite working longer hours, he said, home chores shouldn't be too taxing for me because I don't perform much physical activity at work. We had agreed when I first started working that he would assist with at least some duties, but every time I returned home, the job was only partially completed. He often claimed to be too tired as an excuse. We would argue about it all the time until I finally gave up on trying to get him to do his share. To prevent the frequent conflicts, I started taking care of everything myself. I started smoking because I was so stressed out. Tom also made fun of me for this, claiming that I was merely attempting to flaunt my level of stress. In addition to enduring Tom's constant criticism of my poor cooking, which was mostly his fault because he never assisted with meal preparation and I had to juggle everything between work and other responsibilities, I had been living like this for the past few years. Knowing that leaving would have an effect on our son's life, I stayed solely for his sake. I finally gave up and hired a maid last year, covering her money out of pocket. Tom continued to make fun of me because he believed it was a reflection of my poor housekeeping abilities. He was often contrasting me with his mother, his aunts, and other women he knew who had no trouble juggling work and home. He would simply laugh it off and tell me to calm down because it was only a joke, even though I would counter that these women most likely had supporting husbands. I would be much more enraged by that. We would occasionally have fun together, but the times he would irritate me were what I remembered, and I had been thinking about getting a divorce for a while. When Tom brought his ex-girlfriend Lucy, 28F, home for supper last week, I finally lost it. His high school girlfriend Lucy and he dated for nearly 6 years before splitting up because they were attending different universities. The first time he saw her was at the grocery store. She had just moved into our area and had asked her over for supper without even asking me. Even after our marriage, Tom's friends would frequently bring her up and make fun of him for it, so I knew these two were quite the item in high school. However, that didn't prepare me for his overly pleasant and flirtatious behavior during dinner. He was clearly attempting to irritate me, and it was succeeding. That was the second strike. Then the third strike. He began making jokes about what a messy housewife I would be and how fortunate I was to have my career as a justification. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to explain to any of my guests why I'm such a bad cook. Because Lucy is a stay-at-home mother of 2 girls, he continued making jokes about how much better she was at everything than I was. He joked that I would never be caught doing anything like that after telling me that Lucy was actually at the grocery store purchasing ingredients for a French dish she intended to prepare for her husband. It made them both laugh a lot. He also mentioned my smoking, claiming that I was only trying to flaunt my stress levels, much like Lucy, who was flawless at everything. I was fighting back tears by that point, but I chose to smile through it all because I didn't want Lucy to get the pleasure of seeing me cry. I decided to leave after serving them ice cream for dessert because it was an embarrassing experience. I waited until Tom went to bed that evening. This wasn't odd because I typically clean the dishes at night and don't go to bed until he's sleeping. I packed some clothes and other essentials for our son and myself, booked a cab, and went to my parents' place as soon as he started snoring. By the time I arrived, it was almost midnight. I started crying as soon as my mother opened the door and I attempted to explain. My youngster, who was irritable and perplexed, started crying as a result. Since I wasn't sure whether Tom could take good care of him while I was away and I didn't want to leave him to find out, I had to bring him along. Without asking, my parents took us in, and when they put my son to bed, I was at last able to collect myself and tell them everything. Tom called me in a hurry the following morning to find out where I was. The worry in his voice vanished and he burst out laughing when I told him the truth and announced that I was going to file for divorce. He advised me to just come home and stop the turmoil. I became so enraged by that I began ranting at him, accusing him of being a misogynistic, lazy, selfish, and inept man. He finally appeared to get that I was serious when I told him that I would rather be single for the rest of my life than return to him. He began arguing with me on the phone, accusing me of exaggerating and making a huge fuss out of nothing, rather than offering an apology. He asserted that there was no need to take things personally and that his jokes were merely an attempt to lighten the atmosphere around Lucy. The problem is that his jokes weren't hilarious. They were nasty and cruel, especially considering that I was already making every effort. Every day he simply continued to test my limits. He began acting like the victim when he realized that this was more than just a joke, saying that I had been plotting my departure for some time and that this was the final straw. Currently, all of our friends are texting me to tell me that I should prioritize our family over myself and not allow a few dumb jokes to ruin our marriage. Everyone keeps saying that I shouldn't ruin a home over some jokes, even though I've attempted to explain that there are a lot of things they don't know. Some people seem to feel more at ease when I posted an explanation of all I had previously discussed. Tom also noticed it and remarked that I should have notified him if these were my issues, and he would have taken care of it. I've been telling him these things for years, but it hasn't changed, so it's absurd. I just finished, and it felt like I was speaking to a wall. But following that post, he began to insist that he only needed one final shot to make it work and that he would change and get better. He convinced some of our acquaintances to try to convince me to stay by telling me that he would undoubtedly improve and make a fantastic spouse. However, it irritates me that he continually bringing up our pals. He seems to be using a deceptive and immature strategy, peer pressure, to try to talk me out of pursuing a divorce. Over the past few years, I've given him numerous opportunities to get better, but he's never done so, so I don't think he's capable of changing anymore. Even if I stayed right now, I'm confident that he would attempt to make a sincere effort for a few months before reverting to his previous conduct. I'm tired of being a single mother even though I have a spouse, and I'm not getting any younger. He's hardly the ideal role model for our son, aside from anything else. I most certainly do not want my son to grow up in a home where Tom's kind of behavior is accepted. For the sake of my son, I stayed with him for a very long time, and now I'm leaving him for the same reason. I filed for divorce 2 days ago, and he was served today. He is upset primarily because he never wanted a divorce in the first place, and because I have asked to keep the house where we lived and filed for full custody of our son, or sell it and divide the proceeds 60-40, with me receiving the larger portion. Since both of our parents gave us the house as a wedding present, I believe it is only just that I keep it or that we divide the proceeds from its sale. Because of all the labor and effort I've put in over the past few years, working full-time, raising my son, and handling all home chores without his assistance, I feel that I should be given the greater part. I believe the petition is quite reasonable because I'm not even asking for alimony. Even though I want a divorce, Tom claims I'm being unfair and that I shouldn't have asked for full custody because our son is equally his and mine. Which is reasonable, but I don't believe he's capable of being a father. He may still visit and see his son whenever he wants to. I haven't attempted to take away his visiting privileges. He simply does not have him on a full-time basis. After I was served, he called and said I was being crazy and that this was a terrible overreaction. He claimed that since I was requesting full custody in the house, he already didn't agree with the divorce and had good reason to think I was being irrational. It was really embarrassing when he broke down in tears on the other end when I stated that I had thought a lot about it and that it hadn't been easy for me either. It's very clear from everything I've written that Tom isn't a particularly emotional person, so his breakdown is a huge issue. He was crying and told me, very dramatically, that he had taken everything for granted because he never thought he could bear to lose me one day. He pleaded with me to give him one final opportunity to demonstrate his ability to be a wonderful father and husband. I had to let him know that my decision was definite and that he had come to the realization a bit too late, even though it was really difficult for me to do so. I couldn't simply return to the life. It was strange and uncomfortable for me to have to stay on the phone and try to comfort him for the following several minutes as he began to cry even more. He eventually stopped sobbing and declared that if our son suffered as a result, he would never be able to forgive either himself or me. We might renegotiate the terms of his custody in a few years when he's a little older, so I reassured him that this was only a temporary arrangement. I informed him that although this would be difficult for us both, we needed to strive to be strong for our son's sake and make the most of our circumstances. However, he quickly ended the call, and for the next few hours, I didn't hear from anyone. But all of a sudden, our pals have been contacting me once more, telling me that what I'm doing is fundamentally wrong and that I should think twice before acting. They're arguing that rather than being so heartless and self-centered, I should give it some thought since Tom is pleading for one more chance. It was only a handful at first, but now it's almost everyone we know, and I'm beginning to seriously think about changing my mind because I might be the bad guy here. I have no idea anymore. Since my husband doesn't assist me, am I the jerk for requesting a divorce and full custody of our son? Hello, following a very hectic week, I'm back with an update. My lawyer and I have been getting ready for the talks. For the divorce settlement and custody dispute, Tom and I will first meet with the mediator appointed by the court. The actual divorce process doesn't worry me too much, but I'm quite anxious about the custody dispute. Everyone keeps saying that my desire for full custody is absurd, but they don't see the big picture. Our son spends more time with me and always has, so I know he favors me. We all know that's not how kids operate, but Tom has always attempted to build a relationship with our son just on his terms. Observing Tom's abrupt change into a worried father has been one of the most annoying aspects of the previous week. He has been making false claims on social media about how much he misses his son and how unfair it is that he is unable to see him. He hasn't attempted, but he is welcome to come at any time. These posts have been reposted by a number of mutual acquaintances, who have added their own remarks about what a loving parent he is. The truth is very different. Even our son's daily schedule, preferred meals, and allergies are unknown to Tom. He called us only recently to inquire if our youngster still enjoys dinosaur-shaped nuggets. Due to his current space-themed food obsession, our son hasn't had those in more than a year. These minor details cast doubt on his capacity to serve as a main caregiver. Given that I have been actively involved in our son's life while Tom has only occasionally done so, my lawyer believes we have a solid case. Everything from the doctor's visits I've taken our son to, the parent-teacher conferences Tom has missed, and the daily schedule I've kept up while working a full-time job are all being documented. The financial side of things is a complete disaster. Some preliminary documents were sent over by Tom's lawyer, who is disputing my request for the house. They contend that it ought to be divided equally because it was a wedding present from both families. Conveniently, they fail to mention that I have been responsible for all of the upkeep, fixes, and upgrades throughout the years. The incessant barrage of messages from people who hardly understand our predicament is what's truly getting to me. Even some of Tom's gym patrons have contacted me to express their sadness and to tell me what a wonderful man he has always been. They seem to be living in a different universe where having a charming personality at work inevitably translates into being a good spouse and father. My mother-in-law's response has been the most unexpected development. She genuinely phoned me to let me know that she understood my decision, in contrast to the majority of our friends who have sided with Tom. She disclosed that during the early years of their marriage, she and Tom's father experienced similar problems, but she decided to stay and try to resolve them. I could tell how that worked out for her just by the resignation in her voice as she stated those words. All of this has been made possible by the tremendous support of my own parents. When I need to meet with lawyers or take care of paperwork, my mom has been watching our son while my dad helps me manage my financial documents. I've come to appreciate how alone and unsupported I felt in my marriage thanks to their assistance. To be honest, there have been occasions when the tension has been too much to handle. For the first time since I moved out, I found myself reaching for a cigarette last night, but I restrained myself. I came to the realization that my smoking was not a necessity, but rather a result of my marital dissatisfaction. You get clarity in these moments, which is odd. Late at night, Tom has begun texting me lengthy texts that range from tearful pleas to irate accusations. He mentioned in his most recent message that he has been learning how to properly do washing and cooking by viewing tutorials. If it weren't so depressing, it would almost be humorous. At the age of 28, he is only now choosing to develop these fundamental life skills. Screenshots of Tom's private social media posts, in which he offers his perspective, have been sent by several mutual acquaintances. He presents himself as a loving spouse who was taken by surprise by a wife who had never expressed her displeasure. People are accusing me of being cold-hearted and speculating that I may be experiencing a midlife crisis in the comments section. That one made me laugh. It seems like I'm already experiencing a midlife crisis at the age of 35. My lawyer told me not to react to any of these provocations, but to record everything. She claims that when he engages in this type of deceptive behavior in public, it actually helps our cause. It's difficult to avoid feeling under attack from all sides, though. Observing how much more at ease our son has been since we relocated to my parents' place is the one thing that keeps me grounded. He appears to be happier overall and is eating and sleeping better. Naturally, he still inquires about his father, but he isn't as worried about it as he was when we all shared a home and things were tense. Next week is the date of my first mediation session. Even though my lawyer has prepared me for this, I'm still anxious. I'm aware that it will be a challenging process because Tom's attorney has already stated that they intend to vigorously oppose the full custody request. Every day that goes by makes me feel more certain about my choice, even with all the pressure and second guessing from others. I've been reminded of what a supportive home is like by living with my parents. For the first time in years, I'm getting enough sleep, and I'm beginning to recall my former self before I got so caught up in trying to make an impossible scenario work. As we begin the legal proceedings, the upcoming weeks will be critical. After the mediation session, I'll provide another update, but for now, I just wanted to express my gratitude to everyone who helped me with my first post. When I was most doubting myself, your remarks kept me going. Update 2. Tom paid us a visit at my parents' house today. Since my last update, which was a week and a half ago, I must admit that I was terrified of this encounter. This was most likely our final informal meeting before the actual legal process starts, as we have our mediation session in a few days. Given all of his recent passionate text messages, I anticipated this visit to be contentious. But today's events fundamentally altered my viewpoint on a number of issues. Tom was standing there when I answered the door, looking more put together than I had seen him in a long time. In addition to bringing a small gift bag for our son, he was dressed appropriately in a button-down shirt rather than his typical gym clothing. His manner truly caught my attention. None of the defensiveness or animosity I had been bracing myself for was present. Even when we were married, he seldom ever engaged in small chat with my parents. He talked to my dad about some local sports and inquired about my mom's garden. Yes, it was embarrassing, yet oddly polite. This unexpectedly normal conversation lasted for approximately 15 minutes before he asked to see our son. It took me a bit to answer because the way he asked, not demanded, but asked, was already so different from how he usually behaves. When we entered the living room, our son was playing. His whole face brightened when he spotted Tom. "Daddy!" he yelled, dropping his toys and sprinting directly into Tom's embrace. I saw their contact from the doorway. When I brought up our son's new space passion in the custody documents, Tom brought a new puzzle, one with spaceships, demonstrating that he had genuinely listened. Tom led our kid to take the lead in assembling it, something he had never done before, and they sat on the floor together. Typically, he attempted to regulate the activities and became irate when our son did not precisely follow his directions. Hearing Tom inquire about our son's day, his daycare pals, and his favorite aspects of living at Grandma and Grandpa's place truly got to me. He truly listened to our son's meandering responses about the treehouse in the backyard and the neighbor's cat. I had never witnessed him interact with our son in this way in all the years we had been married. At one occasion, our son began to tell Tom about how I prepare rocket-shaped sandwiches for him. Previously, Tom would have made a snarky remark about my culinary abilities, but now he wanted our kid to show him how. Our son took his father's instruction on how to properly assemble a rocket sandwich extremely seriously, and they spent the next 20 minutes in the kitchen. Our son's question about when he may see his father again was the true turning point. I was struck by the hopeful expression on both of their cheeks. Tom didn't try to control the situation or make demands right away. He simply stared at me while he awaited my answer. When it was time for Tom to leave after they had finished playing, our son gave him a big embrace and invited him to return the next day. Tom gave me a curious look, and before I had given it much thought, I found myself nodding. Before Tom went, we had a little conversation at the door. He admitted that he had been a terrible father thus far, without displaying his customary defensiveness. He acknowledged that he realized how much he had missed by not being more involved after witnessing our son's growth and transformation in only these few weeks. Even though he couldn't be a better husband, he assured me he was willing to learn everything he could to become a better father. He said he had been attending parenting classes 3 times a week and had hired a nanny to teach him how to properly care for children. Not to gloat, but to show me that he was serious about this, he displayed the diplomas on his phone. He didn't make any lofty claims about changing or try to get me to return. He simply asked me to reevaluate the complete custody agreement instead. He proposed that we arrange a timetable that would allow him to demonstrate his ability to be a responsible parent without interfering with our son's daily routine. I phoned my lawyer after he departed. The following paragraph is logically separated and punctuated. I informed her that I would be willing to talk about a joint custody agreement and that I no longer wanted to pursue full custody. She brought up all of the records we had collected demonstrating Tom's prior lack of involvement, but I told her that even if he hadn't been a good husband, I needed to give him an opportunity to improve as a father. Our son's expression of unadulterated happiness today made me realize that, even though it's the proper thing to terminate my marriage, I don't have the authority to break off my son's relationship with his father, especially now that Tom is finally demonstrating that he wants to be the father our son deserves. Update 3. Surprisingly, the divorce talks are proceeding considerably more amicably than I had anticipated. Tom and his attorney have been extremely helpful, which I believe is his way of expressing regret for his previous actions. Our son's custody arrangements are still being worked out verbally and informally, but we're thinking that he should spend half of the month at his dad's house and the other half at mine. Actually, we're doing just that at the moment. In a few days, my son will move in with his father. This arrangement first made me nervous, but Tom has really come through for me. To his great relief, he has begged his mother for assistance. She has been more supportive than some of my closest friends, even when our marriage ended. She still gives me a call every day to see how I'm doing and sends me photos of the bedroom she's helping Tom furnish for our boy. Additionally, the house matter has been settled more readily than I had thought. In recognition of the extra effort I had put in over the years, Tom agreed to sell it and divide the revenues 55-45 in my favor. This solution was actually proposed by his attorney, demonstrating their sincere desire to be fair. In addition, Tom has taken a co-parenting course, which was suggested by the mediator but not necessary. Through our new co-parenting app, which allows us to manage appointments, calendars, and our son's activities without having to speak to each other directly, he has been updating me on his progress. The way Tom manages our son's space period has been the most unexpected development. His apartment's spare room has been converted into a miniature planetarium, complete with ceiling-mounted glow-in-the-dark stars. In order to maintain continuity between houses, he asked me for our son's nighttime ritual, which he has been practicing with his mother. Since neither of us believes that a 2-week period without seeing either parent is healthy for our son, I continue to see him every few days while Tom is away. We've arranged for Wednesday supper with whoever doesn't have him that week and alternating weekends. Instead of rehashing our marital problems, the mediation sessions have been fruitful since they have focused on realistic co-parenting techniques. Regarding managing school schedules, healthcare decisions, and holiday plans, Tom has been actively engaging, taking notes, and posing pertinent questions. No more conflict on social media or late-night texts. We've set clear contact boundaries. Our lawyers or the co-parenting app handle everything. In a last update, Tom willingly removed all of his earlier posts regarding our predicament and said that we are resolving the matter in private for the sake of our son. Through all of this, his mother has been an unanticipated blessing. In addition to teaching Tom how to be a parent, she also acts as a mediator between us when tensions arise. She set up a meeting with both sets of grandparents last week so we could have a reasonable conversation about our disagreements over preschool alternatives. In the end, we came up with a solution that satisfied everyone. Our son appears to be adjusting to the new situation rather nicely. Although we're attempting to keep things somewhat consistent by bringing his favorite stuffed animals with him when he moves between homes, he is thrilled to have 2 rooms and 2 sets of toys. Without showing any signs of concern, he stopped asking when we were returning home and instead talked about mommy's and daddy's houses. Our lawyers are taking care of the financial matters expertly. With explicit instructions on how much each of us will pay and how the funds may be utilized, we are creating a joint account especially for our son's costs. Tom proposed this on his own because he wanted to make sure that our financial obligations as co-parents were transparent. We have a thorough parenting plan that addresses everything from medical choices to education. Even instructions on how to manage future relationships have been included, such as meeting any possible new partners before presenting them to our kid. I am aware that there are still obstacles in our way. This is only the start of our co-parenting adventure, and there will surely be setbacks. However, for the first time since it all started, I have genuine hope that we will be able to prioritize our son's needs and cooperate as parents, even if we are unable to cooperate as spouses. The most important thing is that my son is happier than I have seen him in months. Both Tom and I now realize that letting go of the previous hurts is less essential than becoming good co-parents. I'm glad we were able to come to an agreement that prioritizes our son's welfare while still enabling us to have deep connections with him. I appreciate all of your help and guidance during this trip. When I was having self-doubt, your advice kept me going and helped me make choices that would benefit my son and myself. This community has been an amazing source of insight and strength. My sister sabotaged my wedding dress and announced a fake pregnancy at my son's birthday party, but what I uncovered next destroyed our family. I am 35 years old, the youngest of 3 sisters, and here is the tale of how, at my son's first birthday celebration, decades of family strife finally erupted. Let me explain the convoluted history that brought us to this point before delving into the recent events. My oldest sister, Lisa, 40F, and I had a tense relationship while we were growing up in suburban Pennsylvania, but she got along well with our middle sister, Rachel, 38F. Lisa has behaved more like my first bully than a sister since I can remember. She unintentionally shoved me into my cake in front of all my friends at my 5th birthday celebration, spoiling not just my special day but also my favorite dress. I can still clearly recall that moment. Rachel later pulled me away and helped clean me up, establishing a pattern that would last the rest of our lives, even though our parents dismissed it as normal sibling rivalry. As we grew older, the bullying just became worse. Lisa would purposefully humiliate me in front of my peers during my middle school years by calling me derogatory names and spreading untruths about me. When I was 13 and had my first crush, the worst thing happened. For months, Lisa destroyed my social life by telling the boy I liked that I still peed the bed, which was totally incorrect. Rachel attempted to step in, but our parents insisted that we had to resolve our differences on our own because sisters do argue. My adolescence presented new difficulties. I became interested in alternative music and began using darker makeup and clothes to represent who I was. Lisa would make fun of me by calling me Cruella and would bark every time I passed her at school, while Rachel assisted me in trying out various looks. There were also frightening times, such as when she would ambush me from behind close to stairwells, leaving me continually concerned for my safety. While Lisa was preoccupied with being the ideal daughter, joining cheerleading, and dating the quarterback, I found solace in technology and academics. By my senior year of high school, I had already found my passion for computer science and was working as a freelance web developer. This change in our paths appeared to exacerbate Lisa's hostility. I devoted all of my energy to establishing a profession in IT consulting after high school. After earning honors from Penn State, I immediately found work at a prominent Philadelphia consulting business. Lisa, who had opted for a more conventional route, getting married to her high school boyfriend Greg, 41 minutes, immediately after college, and settling into suburban life, seemed especially displeased by my success. My personal life suffered during my 20s while my profession took off. I was getting promoted, developing a reputation in my field, and flying across the nation for projects. Rachel, who was now a high school teacher, continued to be encouraging and would frequently defend my decisions at family get-togethers. Lisa, meantime, would scathingly criticize me for ignoring my family responsibilities and prioritizing my job. At the meal for my 25th birthday, the tension reached a breaking point. Just as I was blowing out my candles, Lisa announced she was expecting her first child. She quickly became the center of attention, and my celebration turned into an unplanned baby shower planning session. Only Rachel caught my stealthy departure from the table and trailed me to the bathroom. Rachel hugged me and said, "She's jealous because you're successful on your own terms," while I tried not to cry. Over the following few years, I kept in touch with Lisa very little and concentrated on developing my job. I was directing significant digital transformation projects at the age of 30 after being promoted to senior consultant. I first met James, 37 meters, at a tech conference in Boston. We bonded over our mutual appreciation of technology and vintage rock while he was presenting on cybersecurity. James actually cared about my profession and encouraged my goals, unlike other dates who had been put off by my career. James proposed over a Cape Cod weekend after a year of dating. I was so happy that I wanted to tell my whole family about it for the first time. Rachel was overjoyed and volunteered to assist with wedding preparations right away. Although my mother kept asking if I was certain I wanted to settle down at this stage of my career, my parents were thrilled. At first, Lisa's response was pleasantly favorable. In an effort to have the ideal wedding day, I spent months organizing it. I discovered my ideal dress, a sophisticated A-line gown with delicate vintage accents and elaborate beading, after saving money from my consulting job. Although the $800 price tag wasn't high by wedding dress standards, it symbolized years of perseverance and self-reliance. 3 months prior to the wedding, the dress incident occurred. The changes had been offered by my Aunt Mary, a skilled seamstress. Lisa claimed she wanted to check on the progress of the changes when she arrived at Aunt Mary's house one afternoon with her 2 huge dogs. Lisa knew her dogs would go into the sewing room, so she purposefully left the door open while Aunt Mary was preparing tea. The ensuing devastation was total. The beautiful lace was destroyed, the bodice was ripped apart, and beads were all over the place. After many unanswered calls, I finally made it to Aunt Mary's house, where I discovered her crying. At first, she tried to place the blame on herself as she described what had transpired, but something didn't match up. Known for her attention to detail, Aunt Mary would never leave a bridal gown exposed. She explained how Lisa had planned the entire incident when I gently pressed her, even pleading with her not to give me the truth. The ensuing altercation was heated. Presumably to talk about wedding plans, I brought our parents and both sisters to my parents' place. When Lisa entered, beaming and thrilled to be a bridesmaid, Rachel realized right once that something was up. Lisa's facade fell apart when I told her what I knew. When she had to wear something off the rack for her own wedding, she went on a tirade about how I always had it easy and how I didn't deserve such a costly dress, instead of expressing regret. At last, the truth was revealed. Lisa acknowledged that she intentionally let her dogs into the room with the knowledge that they would ruin the garment. Despite her husband's prosperous career, she claimed financial difficulties because she was only able to repay $500. When our parents realized for the first time how envious Lisa really was, they were stunned into silence. I immediately revoked her invitation to the wedding. My father, who felt bad about ignoring Lisa's actions for years, helped pay for a different outfit for the wedding. Despite the family drama, Rachel was my maid of honor, and the day was lovely. I ignored Lisa's generic card of congrats. I kept my distance from Lisa for the next few years as I started a new life with James. As I progressed in my career and eventually became a partner in my consulting firm, we purchased a suburban home. We made the decision to start a family when I was 34, and I got pregnant with our son. Being a mother altered me in some way. Perhaps it was the hormones or the newfound perspective that comes with starting a family, but I found myself thinking about making amends with Lisa when my mother proposed it. "You're both mothers now," she'd add. "And family should stick together." Lisa contacted me once again after my son was born, and this time she seemed sincere in her regret. Lisa broke down in tears during our first meaningful chat in years, revealing that she had been working through her problems in treatment. She discussed her own fears, how my achievement had rekindled long-standing feelings of inadequacy, and how having a child had helped her recognize the destructive nature of her actions. She committed to becoming a better aunt and sister in the future. Lisa appeared to keep her word during the ensuing months. She would offer to babysit, send lovely gifts for the baby, and even support my decision to go back to work part-time against some critical family members. Despite her skepticism, Rachel agreed with my choice to give Lisa another chance. Although he never completely forgot the wedding dress event, James also started to get used to the new family dynamic. Everything seemed to be getting better. Lisa seemed to have a particular link with my son, truly acknowledged my triumphs, and attended family functions without causing trouble. I began to think that individuals could change and that my sister's jealousy problems had been resolved by maturity and therapy. This leads us to my son's first birthday celebration, which took place last week. With close relatives and friends, we had organized a modest but meaningful party. When Lisa showed up early to assist with the decorations, I recall being appreciative of our progress. Everything about the party was going great. My son was loving being the life of the party, everyone was having a great time, and the decorations were stunning. The cake moment then arrived. Lisa abruptly approached the DJ we had hired for background music just as James and I were getting ready to assist our son with his first birthday cake. My stomach fell when she reached for the microphone, recalling my 25th birthday. Of course she wouldn't, not at her nephew's first birthday, not again. Update 1. A week has passed since the disastrous birthday party, and I must tell you what transpired. Lisa seized the microphone as we were going to do the cake ceremony, as I said in my initial post. She spoiled my son's special occasion by announcing to everyone that she was expecting her third kid. What followed, however, was much more startling. She approached me directly, gave me an envelope, and declared that she wanted me to plan her impending baby shower because I had received her support during my first year of motherhood. A comprehensive to-do list, complete with venue recommendations, theme ideas, and even a guest list with dietary requirements, was enclosed in the envelope. As I read through it, decades of repressed rage erupting, my hands were shaking. I ripped the list to shreds in front of everyone without giving it any thought. The room fell silent. Lisa's arrogant face changed to one of amazement, and then she began to cry. She started complaining about how hormonal I was acting and how I was ruining her special announcement. In a low voice, my father, who has at last begun to see through her deceit, urged her husband Greg to take her outside. As expected, my mother attempted to defend Lisa by arguing that she had every right to express her happiness at the celebration because she was my son's aunt. God bless her, Rachel took command of the issue. Declaring that this was neither the place nor the time for such pronouncements, she firmly escorted Lisa and Greg out. It was a messy aftermath. James was angry, not only at Lisa, but also at me. Although he could understand my frustration, he believed that rather than making a spectacle at our son's party, I ought to have dealt with it in private. He made a statement later that evening that truly resonated. We can't control Lisa's actions, but we can control how we react to them. Despite our efforts to save the celebration, the majority of our attendees left soon after the incident. Fortunately, my son was too small to comprehend what was going on, so he played contentedly with his new toys. However, as I gazed at the partially consumed cake and discarded party decorations, I couldn't help but believe that Lisa had once again managed to sabotage an important event in my life. Throughout the week, the fallout has persisted. On social media, Lisa has been sharing passive-aggressive posts about poisonous family members and how some people never care about other people's pleasure. She also involves our extended family. On multiple occasions, aunts and cousins have called to apologize for my outburst. After reading Lisa's posts on social media, Rachel unfriended her, demonstrating her unwavering support for me. My mother keeps saying that I should be the mature one and apologize before Lisa's pregnancy hormones cause her too much stress, But my father called yesterday to say he understood why I behaved the way I did. Since our first quarrel, James and I have hardly discussed the incident. He's not incorrect. After years of Lisa controlling every important event in my life, I think I could have handled it better, but something inside of me just lost it. This time, I'm thinking of permanently severing my relationship with Lisa. I'm sick of giving her opportunities to harm me, and it's obvious that therapy hasn't improved her as much as she promised. Right now, my top priority is shielding my son from her harmful conduct when he gets older. Is it improper of me to want to avoid contact? Was it better for me to confront her after the party? I feel that my response was warranted, but I'm still feeling bad about spoiling my son's celebration. Report 2. Everything has drastically changed in the 2 weeks since my last report. What began as family turmoil has grown into something far more significant, revealing years of deceit and manipulation by Lisa. Rachel approached me with some intriguing information following the event at the birthday party. The worst part wasn't that Lisa had apparently been lying to our extended family about me for years. As our father's financial controller, Lisa had been embezzling money from our family business, which Rachel had found out about. I have certification as an IT consultant with a focus on financial systems. I used my knowledge to stealthily start looking through the company's documents. I discovered something startling. For years, Lisa had been falsifying the books, taking tiny sums of money that built up to more than $200,000. This clarified how, even after claiming financial difficulties and only partially repaying me for my wedding gown, she was able to maintain her opulent lifestyle. Last week, I brought the evidence to my father's office. Despite his devastation, he acted right away. He convened an urgent family gathering that included our extended family members who had stock in the company. Lisa showed up looking smug as usual, likely anticipating another chance to play the victim over the events at the birthday celebration. Rather, my father projected the financial documents I had found to begin the discussion. As he meticulously went through each bogus transaction, Lisa's face lost its color. I came forward with my expert analysis demonstrating blatant patterns of intentional manipulation when she attempted to attribute it to accounting faults. I wasn't finished though. From the wedding dress incident, which included a signed confession from our aunt, to proof that she had spread false accusations about me to clients and relatives, Rachel and I had assembled an extensive dossier detailing Lisa's years of deception. We even have security camera footage of her rehearsing her pregnancy announcement at my son's birthday party. Greg, Lisa's husband, made the most damaging disclosure. He confessed that Lisa had been lying about her pregnancies to fit in with other people's significant occasions after being driven to his breaking point by the proof of financial fraud. When she announced it at my son's party, she wasn't even pregnant. To get more sympathy, she had intended to stage a miscarriage later. Our father made 2 significant statements as the gathering came to a close. First, Lisa would face financial fraud charges from the corporation. Second, rather than appointing Lisa, the assumed heir to the family firm, as CEO, he had chosen to appoint me, with my technical expertise and demonstrated honesty, as his successor. Lisa's well-planned world fell apart. After realizing her true character, our extended family severed their relationship with her. The following day, Greg filed for separation. As security walked Lisa out of the office, not even our mother, her long-standing supporter, spoke. The fallout has been rapid. Lisa has been placed on leave while a thorough inquiry is conducted. To recoup the stolen money, our family's attorney is drafting both criminal and civil lawsuits. The shareholders, who understood that my technical experience may aid in modernizing the business, unanimously endorsed my appointment as future CEO. Lisa had always wanted the role of head of our family's charity foundation, and Rachel has been given it. Together, we're trying to mend the harm she did to our family's business and relationships. For my part, I experience an odd mixture of loss and vindication. I'm glad the truth is out at last, even if I never wanted things to end this way. James is pleased with my professional handling of the situation, and my father has expressed regret for years of supporting Lisa's actions. Justice can occasionally appear in unexpected ways. I did more than simply stand up for myself. I also revealed the truth and safeguarded our family's heritage. Now that Lisa's manipulation is finally finished, our family can start to move on. Report 3. A month has passed since my last report, and I must disclose that Lisa's condition has taken even more drastic turns. First, the court case has formally started. The forensic accounting team at our organization found that Lisa's embezzlement was much more extensive than we first believed. For almost 10 years, she had been setting up fictitious vendor accounts and using them to transfer business funds. Over $500,000 is now thought to have been stolen, which is more than twice as much as what we first discovered. Given that a portion of the pilfered monies came from the philanthropic coffers of our family foundation, the district attorney's office has shown a keen interest in the matter. Lisa's carefully constructed reputation as a philanthropic socialite has been utterly destroyed by the revelation that she had been embezzling money from initiatives designed to aid impoverished youngsters. Even more startling evidence has come to light during Greg's divorce procedures. He learned that Lisa had covertly kept several private bank accounts in which she kept the stolen funds. After our father retired and turned over the business, she had been preparing to leave him and run off with the money. The irony is that, prior to our father making his succession plans public, she made a lavish pregnancy announcement at my son's birthday celebration, in order to ensure her status as the preferred kid. Our social circle has been severely impacted. It seems that Lisa had been using the information she had accumulated over the years to blackmail a number of family friends. These friends shared their stories once the truth about her misdeeds was revealed. In order to preserve her social standing and obtain inside knowledge about our family business, she had established a whole network of manipulation by leveraging people's secrets. Last week, at a family meal that Lisa clearly did not attend, my mother, who had always stood up for Lisa, finally spoke out. She sobbed and acknowledged that she had allowed Lisa's actions because she was afraid. It seems that Lisa had threatened to reveal some of Mom's previous transgressions if she didn't always support her. My mother has sought therapy as a result of this discovery in order to cope with years of emotional abuse and manipulation. In terms of business, I've started collaborating closely with our father to update the financial processes of the organization. We're putting in place digital tracking technologies and new security procedures that would have stopped Lisa's embezzlement plan. After finding a number of other anomalies that Lisa had concealed, Rachel has assumed the lead in reorganizing the family foundation. Our wide family network was the most fulfilling growth. Lisa had always boasted that she was a member of numerous prominent social groups and charitable boards. She has been fired from every job since word of her crime spread. Her meticulously maintained social media presence, which was filled with social gatherings and charity galas, has simply vanished. Her old best friend paid us an unexpected visit this weekend and gave us a USB disk that included years' worth of text messages and emails. Since we were teenagers, Lisa had been methodically ruining my reputation in our social circle. She had made up stories about me stealing from family members, circulated rumors about me having drug problems, and even attempted to undermine a number of my consulting engagements by lying to prospective clients. Our lawyer has added defamation charges to the mounting pile of legal complaints against her since the evidence was so strong. There are now claims for both monetary and reputational damages in the civil complaint. We held a family gathering yesterday to talk about the direction of our family business. All of the staff responded well when Father formally stated that I would be taking over as CEO in the future. Over the years, other employees shared their own accounts of Lisa's manipulation and bullying. With an emphasis on openness and moral business conduct, we are currently undertaking a comprehensive corporate reorganization. Lisa herself has been forced to move live with a distant cousin in a different state and is facing major criminal charges. After Greg's attorney provided proof that she had fabricated multiple prior pregnancies for manipulative objectives, her attempts to play the victim have completely fallen flat. According to a message sent to Rachel yesterday by the cousin she is staying with, Lisa is still attempting to plot her way out of the predicament because she cannot accept that her web of lies has finally come to an end. Seeing our family together without Lisa's destructive influence has been the most consoling aspect of the entire ordeal. Working together to mend our familial ties and our professional endeavors, Rachel and I have become even closer. In therapy, my mother is improving as she finally realizes the extent of the harm her enabling conduct caused. James has been a huge assistance during this process, assisting me in striking a balance between my family life and my new company obligations. Instead of manipulation and drama, our son is flourishing because he is surrounded by genuine love and support. Using some of the money seized from Lisa's theft, we have chosen to create a college fund for him, transforming her selfishness into something constructive for the coming generation. In retrospect, I see that the actual tipping point wasn't Lisa's statement at my son's birthday celebration. It was only the last thread that caused her whole phony life to fall apart. Justice can occasionally be served in unexpected ways, and the truth, no matter how long it has been suppressed, will finally surface. The tale of our family is about escaping destructive tendencies and creating something greater from the ashes of dishonesty, not merely about justice or retribution. I feel totally free from Lisa's shadow for the first time in my life, and her demise has become our family's rebirth. Update 4. My last update was 4 months ago. This family saga's last chapter is now complete, and justice has been done in unexpected ways. Last Monday, Lisa received an 8-year prison term for financial malfeasance, fraud, and embezzlement. After discovering that she had embezzled from charitable foundations for children, the judge became especially stern. Evidence of her identical methods at prior jobs surfaced during the trial, revealing a distinct pattern of strategic activity. She has been sentenced to pay fines in addition to full reparation. Greg made sure that everyone was aware of Lisa's habit of fabricating pregnancies in order to manipulate her, and his divorce is official. Without the poisonous influence of their mother, his adolescent children now regularly spend time with us and form wholesome bonds with their aunts. Our mother has undergone the most notable transformation. She has changed as a result of months of therapy. She apologized heartily for allowing Lisa's behavior for so long during a recent family get-together. She currently collaborates closely with Rachel at our family foundation, where she focuses on initiatives that assist victims of emotional abuse. Under the new leadership structure, our business has prospered. Modern financial security mechanisms have been put in place by Dad and me, and last month we were able to secure a significant government contract that Lisa had previously destroyed. The work atmosphere has significantly improved, and people who were formerly stifled are now flourishing in their positions. Last weekend was the first time the extended family got together without Lisa. There was a noticeable difference: sincere discussions, a sense of calm that had been lacking for decades, and no underlying strain. Stories of Lisa's previous manipulations were told by a number of family members, which resulted in mutual understanding and healing. Finding Lisa's old diary in her old office was an especially confirming discovery. It included thorough preparations to ruin my name and take over the family business. I was able to realize that her animosity wasn't directed at me, but rather at her own ingrained fears, after reading it with my therapist. Within our organization, Rachel and I have started a mentorship program to assist young women in family companies in identifying and thwarting workplace deception. We are committed to transforming our bad experience into something constructive for other people. At her sentencing, Lisa's last attempt at manipulation, a letter alleging she was the victim of a family conspiracy, failed miserably. The judge's answer was flawless. The evidence clearly demonstrates a pattern of deliberate dishonesty. Even now, your attempt to play the victim shows why society needs to be shielded from more harm by this sentence. James and I are committed to provide a healthier home environment for our baby. By establishing a community education trust with the money recovered from Lisa's embezzlement, her greed has been transformed into something that will benefit others. I came to the realization that the occasion that led to these revelations, my son's first birthday party, was actually a blessing. Sometimes a spectacular incident is necessary to reveal secrets. I'm happy that we confronted abuse and brought about constructive change, even though I never intended for our family to become a cautionary story. The bonds of fear and manipulation are severed. The legacy of our family will be one of fortitude and honesty rather than dishonesty and dominance. Retaliation isn't the only goal of living a good life. It's also about ending destructive patterns and creating something better for future generations. I would want to express my gratitude to the Reddit community for their support during this journey. During my lowest points, your messages and remarks kept me going. Although the road to justice can occasionally take unforeseen detours, constructive change is achievable with honesty and willpower. My sister demands I postpone my wedding for her divorce recovery. Parents skip my big day and toss out my belongings. My whole family is upset with me. My name is Lexi, and I am 27 Fahrenheit. Please listen to my story before passing judgment on me. Rose, my 32-year-old sister, was divorced a few months ago. I've been making an effort to support her during this difficult time. However, Rose and I have never been close, if I'm being completely honest. Her vast sisterhood was lacking. For years, she and her small circle of friends tormented me, and my parents did nothing to stop it. In my family, I always felt alienated. Let's fast forward to Rose's divorce a few months ago. She's been a complete mess. She had to return to live with our parents since she was unemployed. It didn't matter to me because I don't see my parents or Rose very frequently and we are not close. The problem is that I always felt like the odd one out, even as a child. The golden child was Rose. My parents loved her, and she did everything perfectly: straight A's, prom queen moments. In the meantime, I was the challenging, disobedient one. I got into fights, disobeyed curfews, colored my hair in outrageous hues, and more. The way Rose used to make me feel, however, was the worst. Not only would she harass me, but it seemed like she made a conscious effort to keep me out of her plans with her friends in front of me. She made sure I knew I wasn't wanted at school by spreading untruths about me. Then there was the response, or lack thereof, from my folks. They always stood behind Rose, no matter what she did. It stung a lot, and I carried that bitterness into adulthood. I recall telling them once about the things she said to me, and they dismissed it with the comment, "Oh, that's just how sisters are." However, my 29-year-old partner Joshua proposed to me approximately a month following my sister's divorce. It was among the most joyful times of my life. After all, I had been anticipating this for some time. After nearly 4 years of dating, Joshua and I had discussed marriage frequently. Therefore, it seemed as though everything was coming together when he eventually proposed. Even though my parents and I weren't particularly close, I notified them right away, of course. Perhaps, just possibly, this could be something that would unite us, I thought. Almost immediately, I went into wedding planning mode, thinking about venues, clothes, flowers, and all the other details. Sharing this time with my friends and the few members of my family that I truly get along with made me very happy. However, a few weeks later, my mother called. She told me they needed to talk to me about something significant, and she sounded serious. To be honest, my initial assumption was that it might have something to do with Rose and her entire mess after the divorce. I simply got a feeling that something bad was going to happen. So, kind of expecting the worst, I headed to their place the following evening. And sure enough, my mom revealed it as soon as I sat down. They wanted me to delay my wedding by 2 years, she informed me. Yes, 2 years, as Rose had recently gone through a divorce. What I was hearing was unbelievable. My sister's divorce caused my wedding to be postponed. I thought she must be kidding because it was so ridiculous that I briefly burst out laughing. She was dead serious though. She clarified that Rose needed time to heal and possibly find another partner because she was still devastated. It seems like my wedding would get in the way of it. I questioned my mother if she was serious as I sat there in shock. How could she possibly believe that Rose's romantic life was connected to my wedding? Rose's poor choices were intended to cause my wedding, one of the most important days of my life, to be postponed. We are family, and we need to support each other, was the famous line my mother used to strike me. She has said this to me countless times. Always, it's about standing by Rose. They seem to want me to be this quiet, helpful person in the background who always prioritizes her needs. I was unable to control my anger. I told my mother that I couldn't believe she had the audacity to ask me such a question and that this was really absurd. Then I simply walked away. I didn't want to be there and hear more of their guilt-tripping and justifications. However, it didn't end there. Over the course of the following few days, my mother called me often to reassure me that this was the appropriate course of action and that the family as a whole, not just Rose, was at stake. She insisted on bringing up the unfairness of Rose attending my wedding while still going through her divorce. However, when was life ever fair? Just because one individual is experiencing something doesn't mean that things stop. It's not as if I'm attempting to make Rose feel unhappy. All I want is to marry Joshua and begin a life together. My dad also became involved, which surprised me because he often stays out of this kind of drama. Using Rose's current emotional state, and the fact that my wedding would be too much for her to take, he attempted to reason with me. He gave the impression that she would be severely burdened by my wedding, as though my joy would somehow make her even more unhappy. Again, though, I fail to see how it is my issue. I can't stop my life, especially to save her feelings, and I can't control how she feels. My parents continued to phone and harass me for days after that. I knew there would be more of the same guilt trip over delaying the wedding every time I saw their name appear on my phone. I must admit that I was growing impatient with them. In contrast, my sister had not spoken to me at all. I was starting to question whether this was truly what Rose desired or whether my parents were simply projecting their own problems onto me because it was all coming from them. I therefore made the decision to take matters into my own hands and give Rose a call directly after a week or so of this back and forth. At first, I was trying to figure out what was going on, and I was really calm. I questioned her directly if my parents were overreacting or if she was the one who set them up for this. At that point, she verified it. Yes, she did believe that delaying the wedding would be preferable. What was she thinking? She claimed that all of the relatives would question her about the divorce during the wedding and that she wasn't prepared for that kind of scrutiny. I was taken aback. We were discussing the wedding, which was one of the most important days of my life, even though I know divorce is a significant matter. Why should her concerns about what others might think of her take precedence over my wedding? I politely explained to her that this was my wedding and that I didn't think anyone would be bothering her about something so private at a gathering that was meant to be about Joshua and me. Let's face it, people are too preoccupied with the wedding of the couple, the cuisine, the dancing, and their personal life to pay any attention to anything else at the event. At my wedding, of all places, who is going to approach Rose and intrusively inquire about her failed marriage? Naturally, though, she refused to listen. She insisted repeatedly that she wasn't emotionally ready to deal with everyone and that if I truly cared about her, I would think about holding off until she was more resilient and able to take the attention. I became more irate the more she said. At last, I simply explained everything to her. I informed her that whether she or our parents attended or not, the wedding would take place regardless of her feelings. She was insecure about people asking her awkward questions, but I wasn't going to let that stop me from living my life. I didn't have to cope with that. She did. I immediately contacted my folks and told them the same thing once I hung up. "Look, I love you all, but I'm not delaying the wedding," I remarked. "It would be wonderful if you could lend me your support. If not, I can understand, but whether you are present or not, the wedding is taking place." As expected, my mother broke down in tears and said that Rose needed time to recover and that I was destroying the family. However, I had already made up my mind by then. I had no intention of giving up. 3 weeks ago, the wedding did take place. Joshua and I got married, and it was lovely. I won't lie, it was difficult to walk down the aisle by myself, even though my parents weren't there. I had dreamed about that moment all my life, and I always saw my father being there. As I approached Joshua, I could see that broad smile light up his face. I realized that I was just doing this for Joshua and myself, not for my parents, Rose, or anybody else. And to be honest, that was sufficient. I was content with my choice. My closest friends and those who genuinely support us were all around me. After the ceremony, things became a little more tricky when we arrived at the reception. The majority of my relatives, including some aunts, uncles, and cousins who had not been involved in the drama, had arrived. However, they took note. They were definitely curious when they saw that my parents weren't present. "Where are your mom and dad? Is everything okay?" People began to inquire. I was aware that I would eventually have to explain the entire complex situation. I initially made an effort to sidestep the inquiries so as not to turn the day into a family drama, but the questions kept pouring. I eventually sat down with some of my aunts and cousins and told them everything, including how my parents had insisted that I postpone the wedding, how they wanted me to put Rose's needs before of my own, and how they ultimately decided not to attend when I refused to comply. I didn't mince words. I had had enough of acting as though nothing was wrong. They responded with a mixture of amazement and incredulity. Some of them were upset on my behalf, while others were appalled that my parents would even ask such a foolish question. Being able to finally tell my side of the story felt like a weight being lifted off my shoulders. To be honest, it was nice to have some of my family members comprehend the difficulties I had been facing. More individuals heard the story as the evening wore on, and by the conclusion of the evening, it was essentially well known. Something unexpected happened instead of the criticism I had anticipated. The other members of the family began to shun my parents. It seemed as though the entire situation had made people realize how they had been treating me for years, prioritizing Rose and expecting me to always take a backseat to her. People started contacting me to offer their support, saying things like, "You did the right thing by standing your ground," and "I had no idea it was this bad." Then, something even more bizarre occurred. Our cousin, who is getting married next month, sent out an invitation to her wedding without inviting my parents. It seems that on her own special day, she didn't want that kind of hatred. That was completely unexpected, and I feel a little bad about it. However, I can't help but feel validated at the same time. I felt alienated for years, as though I was the one who was constantly making trouble or not being sympathetic enough. However, people were finally beginning to realize that perhaps, just possibly, it wasn't entirely my fault. Joshua and I took a week-long honeymoon after my wedding, and it was, quite honestly, the nicest getaway I could have ever imagined. Away from all the family drama, we traveled alone to this lovely beach resort. For the most part, I just enjoyed the silence without checking my phone. I was aware that my parents and most likely my sister would send me messages, but I was unable to handle them while on the honeymoon. It was time for us to unwind and begin this new chapter stress-free. Reality struck me hard once we returned. I made the decision to listen to the voicemails that had accumulated for a while. To be honest, I wasn't expecting what I heard. Rather than attempting to resolve the issue or simply have a polite chat, my parents' communications were rife with profanity. Among other colorful names, my mother dubbed me an entitled brat. My father spoke in a similar tone, even going so far as to say that I was destroying the family. It was really nasty, not just angry. The allegations of selfishness, the guilt trips, and the passive-aggressive comments were all too much. I initially chose to ignore the messages in the hopes that they would stop after a few days, but that didn't work out. Actually, the situation just got worse. They increased the frequency of their calls and left voicemails full of the same poison nonsense. They started contacting me via Facebook, Instagram, and email after I banned their numbers. They didn't let up. After being silent since the wedding, my sister suddenly spoke up and sent me lengthy letters accusing me of ruining the family by prioritizing Joshua and my happiness over maintaining the family's togetherness. To be honest, it was rather draining. They even began using several phone numbers at one point in order to avoid being blacklisted. After I blocked one number, they would return with another in a few hours. I had the impression that I was playing a perverse game of whack-a-mole, except that toxic family members who couldn't accept no were the moles. To be honest, I became quite irritated. When your own relatives simply won't leave you alone, what do? They would always find a way to drag me back into the drama if I attempted to stand back and concentrate on my personal life. They seemed unable to accept that I was content without them and that I no longer required their continual affirmation or approval. I discussed it with Joshua, and he has been really encouraging. He made suggestions ranging from deleting all communication to altering my phone number. However, a part of me is really torn. They're still my parents. Despite everything they've said and done, I still feel horrible for shutting them out, which makes me feel like the evil guy. However, I am aware that I cannot continue to allow them to abuse me in this manner. They refused to listen to me when I tried to explain how their actions were impacting me. My mother used classic emotional manipulation when she said things like, "You're choosing your husband over your own family. And you'll regret this when we're gone." I don't even believe they're interested in hearing my side of the story at this time. It seems as though they are merely trying to regain control over me because they are angry that I have deviated from their authority and are making every effort to entice me back. To be honest, I don't know what to do. A part of me feels that I should just stop talking to them altogether, change my phone number, remove them from social media, and stop communicating altogether. I'll regret it though, according to this persistent voice at the back of my head. That one day I'll regret how I handled things, or that perhaps, just possibly, they'll change their ways and see how poisonous their actions have been. Let's face it though, how likely is that to actually occur? They won't alter based on what I've observed thus far. If anything, they appear to be stepping up their efforts, claiming that I have betrayed them by defending myself. I can't continue to live this way, always being cautious and anticipating the next round of messages filled with guilt. I need some guidance, Reddit. What can I do to make this stop at last? Has anyone else experienced the same thing with family members that would not quit bothering them? How did you respond to it? Is avoiding touch the ideal course of action in this situation, or is there a medium ground that I haven't considered yet? They just won't go away, even though I feel like I've tried everything. My family seems intent on keeping me stuck in this cycle of duty and guilt, even though I want to go on with my life and concentrate on my marriage. I would appreciate any guidance. First update. Hello everyone. I thought I'd give you some further history on my family dynamic because many of you have been inquiring about my childhood. To be honest, there isn't a particularly noteworthy incident or time that made me understand my family wasn't supporting me. The fact that I was growing up in a home where I didn't feel understood or supported emotionally came to me more gradually. It's difficult to explain without coming across as ungrateful because, in theory, my parents fulfilled their obligations. I had clothes and food, attended school, and occasionally had family holidays. However, I never experienced genuine affection or value. My parents were always far more concerned about my older sister, Rose, when I was growing up. Not in the conventional sense of older sibling gets more responsibility. It seemed to them that I was the one who caused difficulty, the one they had to put up with, and Rose was innocent. When I tried to show them something I was enthusiastic about or bring home good marks, they would give me a half-hearted, "That's nice, Lexi," before going on to whatever Rose needed. I was only there, but she was always the focus of their attention. As a child, it's difficult to describe how alienating it is to be ignored and treated as though you're invisible. And that happened more than once. Throughout my early years, that pattern kept coming up. I believe I was 16 years old when I got into a heated argument with some of my school pals. At the time, it felt like the end of the world, one of those things that happens to teenagers. I cried when I got home, looking for some consolation or even some guidance. While a, "Hey, it'll be okay" moment would have been nice, I'm not claiming I was expecting a full-on therapy session. Rather, my dad stated, quite literally, "You probably brought it on yourself. You should learn to pick better friends." When I told my parents about it, just blame, no embrace, no support. In the meantime, they would stop everything to assist Rose in resolving any problems she might have brought home. In addition, let's take a moment to discuss Rose. She wasn't exactly the epitome of an older sister who was helpful. In actuality, she essentially made it her mission to ruin my life whenever she could. She had a small group of pals who were all as conceited as she was, and they found it amusing to harass me. They would do things like hide my belongings, tease me about my attire, or even prank phone the house and say horrible things about me while posing as classmates. It was the sort of thing that, although it seems ridiculous now, seriously damaged my self-esteem when I was younger. What's the worst? My parents were aware of it. "She's just teasing you, Lexi. It's normal sibling stuff," people would respond when I explained what Rose was doing. But I never thought it was usual. When I was around 13, there was one really awful occurrence. I was persuaded to play a game of makeover with Rose and her friends. I should have known better, but I went along with it because I was so anxious for my sister's approval or attention. I looked like a clown when they applied makeup to my face in the most absurd way imaginable. Then, without my knowledge, they snapped photos and distributed them to classmates. Everyone laughed at me the following day. No reprimand for Rose, no pity for me, just the same old thing with an attitude. When I came home crying, my parents just responded, "It's just a joke, don't be so sensitive." In retrospect, I saw that these served as the foundation for my current relationship, or lack thereof, with my family. I worked for years to gain their acceptance and convince them that I was deserving of their love and care. However, it never succeeded. They didn't care about me or what I was going through since they were too preoccupied with Rose and her issues. To be honest, I believe that's the reason I've grown into the person I am now. Someone who has learned to be self-reliant and to defend myself when necessary. Because of this, I had previously felt disappointed by my family when the wedding situation arose. It was only the decisive moment. I had been the afterthought, the second choice, for years. It felt like the last straw when they requested that I postpone my wedding for Rose's sake. They seemed to have learnt nothing from the several instances in which they prioritized her above me. They wanted me to continue playing the part I had always played, which was the one who put the family's togetherness ahead of her happiness. However, I was no longer able to accomplish it. To be honest, it feels like a big relief that I finally made the decision to choose myself. That's the main idea of my early years, then. There was a great deal of emotional neglect and favoritism that left its impact, but nothing particularly dramatic. I've taken a while to come to terms with the fact that I can prioritize my needs and that I don't have to put up with toxic behavior just because someone is family. Now that I have Joshua, we are creating our own small family where I feel respected, loved, and supported. Things I didn't really experience as a child. Thank you for reading, and thank you to everyone who has contacted me with good comments and suggestions. It has a lot of meaning. I'm coming to see that, even with family, it's acceptable to establish limits. Even if it's difficult, I know I'm acting in my own best interests. Second update. Hello everyone, a lot has happened since my last post, so I wanted to offer you all some updates. Unsurprisingly, my folks discovered a new method to irritate me around a week after Joshua and I returned from our honeymoon. I received a message from them requesting that I come pick up my childhood belongings on Sunday since they wanted them out of their home. I was pretty well over it by then, but the message was sudden and cold. I assumed I would simply go get my belongings and be done with it. I tried not to make a big deal out of it, so I simply said, "Okay," in response. However, what I witnessed when I drove there with Joshua for support was beyond absurd. My entire belongings were already on the grass, stacked like a garage sale that nobody was interested in purchasing. And not simply tucked away either. Everything appeared to have been thrown out carelessly, as though it had been left there for hours or perhaps days. Some of my old books were wet from being in the morning dew, and several of my old clothes and toys looked like they had been on the grass for a long time. Things I genuinely cared about, like emotional treasures and old photo albums, had some water stains on them. My belongings were merely collateral damage, as if they were eager to get rid of me. I was enraged. Who, after all, does that? It was about the obvious contempt, not even about the items. Even though I was furious, I knew they were waiting for me to lose it, to scream, to cry, or to demand answers. It was as if they were sending a message that said, "We're done with you." From the window, I could almost see my mother waiting for me to respond, and to be honest, I wasn't going to satisfy them. I so maintained my composure rather than losing it. With composure, I turned to Joshua and requested him to assist me in packing the truck. We didn't knock on the door, talk to my parents, or ask for an explanation. Silently, we simply loaded the truck. Joshua helped me finish it without saying anything, but I believe he could tell I was holding back a lot. It was strange, though, since I became aware of something while we were packing everything up. I wasn't depressed. I wasn't devastated or heartbroken. All I felt was relief. To completely end the chapter of my connection with my parents, this was the last thing I needed. Strangely enough, it felt significant when they threw out my belongings in that manner. It seemed as though they were at last making it clear to me that I was no longer wanted in their lives. I no longer felt upset, but rather liberated from the guilt trips, the emotional games, and the continual pressure to fit in with a family that never truly made room for me. To be honest, I was more than willing to let it go since it felt like they were cutting the last tie. Third update. Hi everyone. Even though it's been a few months, I had to tell you all about something crazy that happened. So, do you recall Rose, my sister? The same sister that couldn't make it to my wedding because she was too depressed and grieved after her divorce. Yes, she is getting married the next week. I'm not making this up, I promise. In fewer than 7 days, the lady who said it took her at least 2 years to move on and find a new man will walk down the aisle. The irony is excessive. Do you know how I learned about it? It came from one of our cousins, not from her or my parents, who haven't spoken to me since the wedding fiasco. She forwarded me a screen grab of their social media engagement announcement. I was at home taking care of business when all of a sudden there was Rose, looking cheerful and in love, flashing her ring to her new fiancé as if the drama of the previous year had never occurred. I had to chuckle. I couldn't even be mad. At this point, it's really funny. Even stranger is the fact that neither Rose nor my parents have mentioned the situation at all. Nothing. I quietly left after discovering my wife's affair after 3.5 years of marriage. A year later, my ghosted ex-wife tracked me down. After hearing of my wife's adultery, I moved to the hills. I'm not sure why I'm writing this, but perhaps it will be helpful to someone now that the incident is over and I've moved on. After 3.5 years of marriage, I learned of my wife's affair in February 2018. I worked a contract job that occasionally required a lot of travel but also permitted me to work from home when I returned. As a director of a technical sales company, my wife held a very lucrative position. Although things had become a little strained due to her working longer and longer hours and me traveling for work, we still had what I would call a fairly excellent marriage. Background: 5 years ago, at a cookout hosted by a mutual acquaintance, I met my wife, who is now my ex. We immediately clicked after we started talking. To be honest, I felt that being with a woman who was so attractive and articulate was a huge advantage. My rough around the edges demeanor somehow appealed to her. After a few weeks of dating, we found ourselves smitten with one another. When we would meet at each other's apartments, the clothes simply flew off. After 18 months of dating, we eventually got married and moved into a large apartment while saving for a down payment on a home. Things began to change after the first 3 years of marriage. Even though I still had feelings for her, I noticed that she would argue over little matters. When I mentioned all the late hours and the increasingly regular work outings, she would grow irate. Since she had been moving up the corporate ladder, she would claim that it was a necessary component of paying the dues. At least that was her justification. She informed me that since I was also away for weeks at a time, I had no right to challenge her. In reality, I had only been taking vacations for 3 or 4 days every 5 weeks or so I assured her that I could definitely manage cutting back on my travel time. There was never a conclusion to these highly circular arguments. Looking back, I realized that I was unaware that my wife was having an affair. Aside from our declining sexual life and her persistently late work hours, I would never have suspected anything. I simply assumed that she was exhausted from her job. But being rejected so often when I tried to start a sexual relationship had taken a toll on my ego. Although she had a work mobile phone and might have been using it, I didn't witness the covert texting that I had read about in other articles. She used our spare bedroom as a home office and spent a lot of time there. Around September 2017, Kathy began returning home from work and spending the evening at a work engagement instead. This increased from 1 night per week to over 3 nights each week. Although I'm not naturally envious, she would undoubtedly be observed by others, and I'm aware that she would need to repel some of the males at her workplace. Despite working with more male CEOs than female ones, she gave off the impression that she was primarily engaged in her job. The first time I suspected she was cheating was a month prior to D-Day. Before returning home, she had made a brief stop at the supermarket. I was asked to assist her with the grocery shopping. Something pink was glinting from just beneath the front passenger seat of her automobile as I was retrieving a few items from the rear seat. It was a bra that belonged to my wife. She preferred ones from a certain clothing store, so I knew it was hers. Looking back, I can see the bra was a warning sign. She always removes her bra first, from under her clothes, when she's feeling very lustful. I'm not sure why, but when I watched this, I felt sick to my stomach right away. I couldn't understand why her bra was beneath the seat. I didn't say anything more. My heart must have been pounding so hard that I nearly passed out, because when I brought the bags back to the kitchen, Kathy asked me how I was feeling and said that I appeared to have seen a ghost. I simply ignored her remark. It took everything I had to conceal my emotions, but I did my best not to appear upset or deceived. I made the decision to try to find out whether or not she was seeing someone that night and the following day. I began to consider all the hints I could have overlooked. Other than the bra, I had no evidence. She works in an office building downtown, and we live in a reasonably big city. I made the decision to temporarily put the affair idea out of my mind and consider giving her more of my attention. I prepared a delicious meal and arranged the dining table with elegant plates, silverware, and candles one Friday after work. I purchased an arrangement of flowers and a lovely bottle of wine. I pointed out the dinner and everything I had made when she arrived as usual, breezing in after work. She apologized and said she was sorry, but she had to go to a neighborhood hangout to meet up with her coworkers. She mentioned that she needed to take a shower first but that she could have a small snack with me before she left. I guess I went utterly silent because my insides flipped on me. I won't explain the type of anger I was experiencing at the time, but I had had enough. I took my work cell phone and threw it in her back seat while she was taking a shower. I had been considering this as a means of using my own phone to find her. I walked into the kitchen after that and threw the food and flowers in the garbage. After taking a shower, she got ready and looked stunning as always. "All right, let's eat," she said. "Never mind, go out with your friends," I urged her. She asked me if I was angry after giving me a weird look. "I'm sad that you never want to do anything with me," I said. She got upset and sarcastically remarked on my short fuse while telling me to stop acting like a kid. I muttered, "Foolish me," as I stood there allowing everything to settle in. For once, I felt we should spend the evening together. She simply gave me a sly smile and stormed off. I pulled out my second phone and began following my work phone when she departed. About 20 minutes away, at the bar she often visits with her coworkers, I caught her stopping. I made the decision to go find her automobile. Indeed, it was in the parking lot of the bar. I waited to see if I could see her in my car across the street. I felt completely different, like a stalker, but I told myself that I had to calm my fear of her whereabouts. I observed her leaving the bar with a man about an hour after I got there. He had the appearance of an executive from her company. He took hold of her, drew her near, and planted a kiss on her lips. My body was totally numb, and my stomach started to clench up. They went to a different vehicle and climbed in together. When their automobile pulled out, I tried to keep up with them. You guessed it, they drove to a hotel 10 minutes away. As I stopped on the street beside the hotel, I saw them exit, holding hands, and enter. I'd seen enough. I felt foolish. I began pounding the steering wheel with my fist. That was it? Something went totally blank inside of me. I'm not sure if I had an out-of-body experience or blacked out, but as I got better, I felt like I wanted a drink. At this point, my life started on a path I never would have imagined. I simply began to drive out of town, replaying all that I had just seen. I was crying out of anger, as much as I hate to admit it. I located a pleasant little tavern on the outskirts of town, some 30 miles away, and stopped in. I ordered a drink while seated at the bar. The bartender, a lady, said that I looked like someone had taken the wind out of my sails, so I guess I looked like death warmed over. I answered, half smiling. "You could say that." A man sat down beside me and struck up a discussion. Even though I didn't feel like talking, there was something about this guy that put me at ease. We struck up a conversation, and eventually my wife's infidelity came up. I told her that all I wanted to do was get away from her and forget about her. "You're not alone, buddy," he replied, giving me a back pat after giving me a quick glance. I experienced that a few years ago. I think there's a reason why these things occur. Your life can now take a positive or negative turn, I assure you. At this point, everything is totally up to you. His remarks, for some reason, jolted me out of my gloom. Even though I was aware of my pain, I've always been able to see things rationally, and he was absolutely correct. We identified ourselves. Ray was his name. I really liked his salt-of-the-earth vibe, even though he was more of a country guy. "When are you going to move out?" he inquired. I suppose I never thought to look that far ahead. I had a fight-or-flight response going on, and I knew I didn't want to be around this woman any longer. "I have an idea and I feel very sympathetic to your situation," Ray added. "When the time comes, I have a mobile trailer on my land in case you feel the need to go. It might require some work and isn't very good. Why don't you visit and see if you could imagine yourself briefly residing in anything like that? I'll give you a terrific bargain on it, at least. You could even park it on a lovely piece of property I own. I would appreciate it if you could watch it for me. It could be beneficial to escape your predicament, just a thought." I took a moment to comprehend his concept. Hell, honey, if I could have escaped my crazy ex-husband years ago, I would have jumped at the chance to go live in his trailer or anything just to get my head on straight, added the bartender, who had been listening in on the chat. Perhaps this was just what I needed, but I felt as though I had wandered into the twilight zone. "Yes, I'll think about it and maybe check it out," I said to Ray. After a while, we split up and agreed to get together at his house in a few days. I began to feel as though I had some perspective and an opportunity to escape what I thought was a terrible heartache combined with a nightmare. I knew one thing for sure. I would never, ever want to spend time with my wife again. I find cheating to be so disgusting, and it has always been the one thing I thought I would never put up with. I sat on the couch when I arrived home that evening after Kathy. Kathy asked me where I had been when she came out. "Where have you been?" I questioned, turning to face her. "You know I went to grab drinks," she said. I directly inquired, "Are you having an affair?" She appeared surprised, but she soon collected herself and responded, "No, why would you ask me that?" I informed her that I had heard she might be seeing someone at work. "Who told you that?" she said. "Someone I know," I said, but I kept the name a secret. After saying, "You're being ridiculous," she accused me of being intoxicated and insane and inquired about my whereabouts. "We're going to a bar to enjoy some drinks with our friends," I remarked. Despite her obvious desire to ask more questions, she returned to our bedroom and went to bed. Now that I had proof that she had been deceiving me for months, I made the decision to sleep on the sofa. I couldn't sleep at all because I kept seeing her in bed with this guy. I felt sorry for myself, disgusted, and hurt. But then I thought about Ray's trailer. The thought of it cheered me up, and it was almost like a revelation. Something must be wrong with me since the fight or flight response automatically activated amid the pain I was experiencing, and I preferred the flight response. We didn't talk much the following morning and carried on with the weekend as if nothing had occurred. I scheduled a meeting with Ray a few days later. I noticed that Ray had a lovely ranch when I got there, and the trailer was actually quite nice, about 26 feet long and fully furnished. It brought back memories of a fun spring break trip I took with pals while I was in college. Ray accepted the money I offered him for the trailer. To be honest, I almost took it from him. I drove over to see his ranch property after he gave me directions. There were hiking and biking paths close by, and the area was lovely, with lots of trees and scrub vegetation. Ray had a little cabin on a hilltop overlooking the property, with electricity and water accessible for the trailer, and it was close to the foothills of some mountains. Ray promised to set up the trailer for me and pull it to the location. I tried to get Kathy to come clean over the course of the following few weeks, but all I got was gaslighting. I even bluntly warned her that there would be no turning back if I discovered she was cheating. As a result, she became even more engrossed in her affair fog, and began to lash out at me with denials. I nearly laughed at how awful the denial was. I scolded myself for not capturing pictures of the two of them, and I had no tangible evidence that she had cheated. I decided that I wanted to leave this marriage after going through this emotional anguish. Instead of communicating my feelings to Kathy, I simply began planning. While she was at work, I started quietly removing my possessions from the apartment and transferring them to the trailer. At least I felt like I was doing something about it. I saw a difference in Kathy during this period. Although she had been behaving more politely toward me, I believed it was too little, too late. I felt I needed a break too, so she kept going on company outings, after work. One night, I got ready too, just as she was leaving. After glancing at me, she inquired about my destination. All I said was, meeting up with some friends. "You wouldn't enjoy all the shop talk, and you don't know them?" I interrupted her as she began to ask more questions. She used to say precisely this to me whenever I asked if I might accompany her on office excursions. "All right, have a good time," she added, with a somewhat offended expression. "I definitely will," I replied. I began making new acquaintances while working on the trailer and hanging out with Ray at the bar. I felt better after spending time with Ray's wonderful family and friends. I also made the decision to cut back on my drinking because I didn't want to form any unhealthy habits. I knew better than to drown myself in sympathy, even though it would have been so simple. At this point, Kathy informed me that the next week she would be traveling for work. She stated the executive team and a few department heads were going when I inquired who was going. "I hope you have a great time with your boyfriend," I added, glancing at her. I immediately regretted saying that because it sparked a furious argument. Although, as Ray had informed me, it didn't really matter, I now regret not knowing more about her affair partner, AP. "It doesn't matter who the other guy is," Ray replied. "The fact that she chose to leave you is all that matters. She destroyed the marriage. Whether she admits it or not, brother, facts are facts. Ray ought to write a book for the betrayed. Damn it. I had the ideal opportunity to move out entirely during Kathy's work vacation. When she was gone, I collected everything valuable that was mine, including clothes, laptops, and equipment. I didn't take any shared goods or furniture. I left a note before I left. It was a lengthy explanation at first, but I chose to make it brief. I wrote, "I hope it was worth it," on a piece of paper. On top of the note on the kitchen table, I set my wedding ring. I felt like a great weight had been lifted as I left. I was liberated. The hurt would take time to heal, and there would be baggage to cope with, but I had started. I needed time to myself and to swiftly and quietly get rid of her. The fact that I hadn't challenged her or coerced a confession didn't make me proud. I hadn't screamed or shouted. She didn't deserve it, in my opinion. She disregarded everything we owned, including our plans for the future, our aspirations for a home and a family, and now it was all gone. There was no turning back. I owed her absolutely nothing. She could handle the consequences. I hadn't planned anything or called a lawyer. I just wanted a new beginning and some clarity. The air from the mountains was just what I needed when I got inside my trailer. I resumed running the next week, and it was wonderful to be alive. Kathy texted things like, "We just landed," "We're having a team dinner," and so on while she was away. "Where are you?" was the question in a few mails. "Why haven't you gotten back to me?" I didn't answer. My phone exploded with calls and texts when she got home. She kept trying to get in touch with me, but I ignored her. Her mother also tried to phone me after the first day, but I didn't pick up. She didn't try to engage my father because we aren't close and he is the only member of my family that I still have. Her messages grew more urgent after she was ignored for a week. "What is this?" was one of the texts she sent. "We must speak. I'm not sure what you believe you know, but nothing is happening. There isn't an affair going on." She finally texted me after a week of not answering, saying, "I'm sorry things got out of hand. It didn't matter that I was involved with someone at work. You were absent a lot while I was preoccupied with my work. I simply made an error. I intended to terminate it." An error? I had been waiting for this confession all along, yet somehow it only made me detest her more. Why was she unable to be truthful? I didn't have any dreams about a future with this woman. Errors don't persist for 6, 8, or a year. Her pleas for me to return and work on the marriage eventually grew pitiful. I refused to respond to her even after she stopped bothering me for a few weeks. I didn't want her to learn where I lived or to snoop around in my life. I didn't want my haven to be destroyed by this woman. She then began sending nasty texts like, "You're a coward one day. You refuse to speak to me. You have no regard for us. Come home, please, so we can discuss. You're where? I am able to visit you. Paul, please let's chat and make things right. Damn it." Although I don't recall all of the texts, they all appeared to be excuses with minimal genuine regret. In one ear, I let them go, and in the other out. After a while, I switched my mobile number. Update: June 2018. I received an email from Kathy informing me that she had hired a lawyer and was going to file for divorce. I just said, "Okay, that sounds good." This led to a barrage of emails requesting that I visit her and other things. She wrote that she would stop bothering me if I consented to an uncontested divorce after realizing this wouldn't work. After I consented, I was genuinely free a few months later. After I moved out of our apartment, I never had to see her again. She seemed to care more about that than I did, even though neither of us had any closure. I would occasionally think of her for a few months, and yes, the grief would suddenly come to me, like when I heard a song we used to enjoy. After a while though, I simply stopped thinking about her. Update 2. Now that I'm officially divorced, things are going great. In actuality, I got to know a wonderful girl. Just down the hill from my house, I was running on the trail. We clicked when I helped her replace a flat tire. Despite being a few years younger than me, she is fantastic and quite adorable. She refers to me as her mountain man, and adores my way of life. Although I'm not in a rush to commit, I also don't intend to give up on women entirely. I have no intention of moving out of the trailer anytime soon. I enjoy being outside and have simplified my life. It made everything easier for me, including the grief and my ex-wife. I am aware that everyone responds to these situations in a unique way. I was fortunate to be in my 3rd year of marriage and not yet a parent. I believe I acted in my own best interests. You don't have to spend your entire life with someone who cheats. If you experience something similar, try not to think about it too much. Continue living your life. As you improve yourself, it will get better. I hope everyone has the finest possible life. I've revised this roughly 5 times to make it readable, and I just wanted to give you an update on my ex-wife's condition. I was worried that my ex-wife was attempting to find me, as I indicated in my earlier post. I left our previous residence, which was around 2 hours away. I ran into her last weekend at a coffee shop I often visit in the town close to my home. It didn't seem like a coincidence to me. Fortunately, I managed to get away before she noticed me. Third update: I went into town this past weekend to get groceries and made a stop at my normal coffee establishment. I was utilizing their free internet to work on some paperwork for work. I finished and walked out of the coffee shop. I was on my way to my pickup when I heard someone shout, "Paul!" When I turned to look across the street, I saw Kathy. I was being waved at by my ex-wife. Finally, Armageddon had arrived. She hurried across the street toward me, and I stood there in disbelief. As though anticipating an embrace, she walked over and extended her hand. I stopped her in her tracks by instinctively holding out my arms with my palms up. She appeared to be in severe pain. Then she added, "I've been searching for you, Paul. I've wanted to see you since I heard you moved here. Can we have a conversation?" Guys, I felt like an animal confined in a cage. Yes, I did. "All right, let's find a table or something and we can talk for a minute," I finally gave in. When she asked if we could come to my house, I firmly refused. At the end of the street, she trailed me down to a bench outside a small store. She began by remarking on how much I had changed and how much she liked my new appearance, beard, and level of fitness. She raved about how much my body had changed. Wearing a tank top, small white shorts, and her hair in a ponytail, just like I used to enjoy, she was really putting on the charm. I had my radar set high. She was clearly attempting to activate the sex appeal. I needed to control myself so I could see where this was headed. She began by saying she was sorry about the affair. She claimed that after I left, karma had severely impacted her. When her employer learned of the affair, the situation became so tense that she eventually resigned. Her affair partner AP, who at the time was engaged, received criticism and was transferred to a different department within the organization. She replied by telling his fiancé the truth after he blamed her for everything, which caused them to split up. This is when she bowed her head and began to weep. I didn't say anything, I just sat there and looked around. She stood up straight and looked at me for a while. "What do you want from me?" I asked. She assured me that she had no intention of having an affair. She stated that the company's politics and positioning drew her in, and that her AP used his charm and influence to corrupt her. She acknowledged that she felt she was taking advantage of him as much as he was taking advantage of her. After I accused her of cheating, she stated that she intended to come clean. She drank after work to ease the guilt she felt at the moment because she loathed herself. She claimed that she felt so stupid, so alone, and as like her heart had burst with loss immediately after I departed. She ended her relationship with her AP right away. She believed she had to find me to see if there was any chance of reconciliation because I refused to speak with her or get in touch with her. She desired a fresh start. She hoped we could start afresh even though she knew we were divorced. I simply gazed at her. I then gave it to her. "You have no right to come out here and undo all the harm you have done. Do you think I'll overlook everything you did to destroy our union? As I previously stated, we were done if you cheated. Forgiveness does not exist. This relationship will not be restarted. You murdered it. As soon as you left me, you ruined everything we had. How foolish do you believe me to be? One evening, I watched you enter a hotel with him. Were you aware of that?" I became aware that people were beginning to notice that my voice had been getting louder. She grabbed my arm and started crying. After letting her sob on my shoulder for a while, I pushed her away. "I deserve all this," she replied, glancing up at me. "I am certain that I do. If nothing else, would you allow me to take you out to dinner? I'd rather not go. I would like to speak further. I want to make sure that we are transparent about everything. You need to spend more time with me than you have in the past. Paul, please. I love you so much, even though I know you might not want to hear it. Before you left me, I had no idea how much I loved you. You broke me as much as I broke you. I'm unable to forgive myself, and I don't want to do so till the day I pass away." She began to sob uncontrollably and hyperventilate. I lifted her up and gave her a hug. It seemed like my only option for soothing her. I knew then that I had shattered her heart as severely as she had shattered mine. Walking, we found a peaceful spot to carry on our conversation. I said, "How did you find me?" when she had calmed down. "Have you engaged a private investigator?" After giving it some thought, she responded no with a small giggle. She clarified that she asked how things were going when she ran into Stacy a few weeks prior. Stacy didn't mention that she had noticed me. Kathy forced her to reveal all the information. I had warned Stacy not to tell her, so she was reluctant, but Kathy persisted. Stacy finally gave in, but all she knew was that I lived somewhere close by and was in town. On her days off, she began to come here to check on me. I kind of laughed when she said that, thinking, damn, Stacy can't keep her trap shut. She blushed. We ultimately decided to have dinner at a charming little spot with a patio. I made sure we didn't drink anything since I wasn't going to give her a reason to be kind to me or say she wasn't so inebriated that she couldn't drive back. In fact, we had a good conversation. I then escorted her to her vehicle. She insisted that she hadn't dated anyone else since I left and vowed fervently that I was the only person she wanted, so she pushed me hard to stay longer. No, it's still way too early for me to go down that road, I informed her. She pleaded with me to come back, but I didn't say yes. After giving her my new email address, I didn't say anything more. My response to her request for my phone number was, "You'll just blow it up with texts and calls." She wept over it, but in the end, she agreed with my choice. She promised to send me an email with information on returning to town the following weekend before she left. I asked her directly, "Would you have forgiven me if I had been the one cheating?" before she got into her car. "Yes, in time, but only if we saw a marriage counselor and worked through the healing process with lots of talking, maybe even a binding agreement," she responded after pausing to reflect. "All right, maybe I could do that. In 5 or 10 years, I answered. "I would wait if that's what it would take," she replied. She then took both of my hands in hers, looked me in the eye and said, "God damn it, Paul, I will always love you and will do anything to prove it." This statement truly caught me off guard. Her remarks continued to upset me even after she left. She had spoken those words so firmly. However, I was still unable to envision us reuniting. Even though I felt better about the incident, I was unable to perceive her as a friend at this time. Perhaps a friend, but even that was a mystery. I returned home, enjoyed a long run, had some beer, and thought about how far I had come. Could someone please assure me that she wouldn't destroy the tranquility I had created for myself? I had no idea. I had the luxury of time to sort through it and get perspective, but it was all still too vivid in my mind. Last update. Most likely, this will be my final update. When I first uploaded my story to Reddit, the moderators kept taking it down. In summary, I ghosted my ex-wife for more than a year before she discovered me. She wanted to make amends and start over with us. You will be deeply disappointed if you thought I would be the typical beta blue pill fool and forgive her. She expressed her love and regret for the affair in a lengthy email she sent me last week. She offered to come out and stay with me for the weekend once more. My answer? I silenced her. I informed her that I had no plans to make amends with her. I'm totally happy living alone, taking advantage of my secluded position, and keeping things simple. At 32, I'm not in a rush to make changes. I have my own self-determination plan and have enjoyed the company of a few women and friends. I made it clear in my email response that I had no intention of reconciling and declined to provide her with my phone number. I no longer know or trust you because you made your bed. I hope the best for you, and perhaps we might become friends in the future, but not right now. She was annoyed by my evasiveness and responded in a telling way. She acknowledged that she had taken a job offer from a different state. Her true goal had been for me to accompany her, believing that my remote work would make the move simple. She wished we could start over somewhere new. She wanted to visit me in person to attempt to persuade me because she was running out of time before moving. Luckily for me, her time was up because I had a week of business travel scheduled. I'm grateful. I will no longer have her in my life. She will soon recognize that her time with me is over, but I anticipate receiving a few more emails. She'll need to find someone else, and she might even cheat on them. To anyone reading this, make the most of your life. Let go of the past and give yourself the strength to go on. To all of you, good luck. Entitled Mom tries to force me to sell my property for her daughter's college and escalates when I refuse. I possess $34 million worth of real estate in our hometown, including a number of homes. Years of arduous labor, prudent financial decisions, and self-sacrificing actions have led to this. For background, I'm from a modest family. Both of my parents worked in blue-collar jobs and put in a lot of effort to give my siblings and I a decent upbringing. Although it was out of their price range, they had always hoped to own their own home. Their upbringing stoked my desire and strengthened my resolve to improve my family's quality of living. My wife and I were in college when we first met. Raised by a single mother who worked several jobs to make ends meet, my wife's family had similar experiences. She became aware of the importance of ingenuity and financial caution. Both of us aspired to overcome financial difficulties and provide a secure future for our kids. Over the years, my wife and I have been buying and flipping residences nonstop. We gradually accumulated a number of properties by carefully investing and saving every cent. Every property stood for years of toil, innumerable sacrifices, and a common goal between us. I am now the father of a son and a girl, 2 amazing children. In addition to being a source of revenue, our properties serve as a testament to our commitment to providing for our kids' futures. I had no idea that an entitled woman named Emily, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, who has been one of my tenants for a few years, would soon cause my life to take an unexpected turn. She lives in a cozy 3-bedroom home that I bought years ago, before I married my wife, after careful saving. Her daughter's high school is adjacent to the property, which is situated in a desirable area of the city. After their daughter was born, Emily's husband abruptly left her, leaving her a single mother. I gave her subsidized rent to allow her to move in after learning about her situation. I wanted her and her daughter to be able to afford to live there, even though I knew I would lose out financially. The rent has stayed the same over the years, and I have never raised it. Emily had consistently paid her rent on time, making her a dependable tenant. Our relationship as landlord and tenant became informal, and we occasionally stayed in touch when she needed my assistance around the property. Her daughter was a senior in high school and getting ready to submit a college application. Emily told me 3 months ago that her daughter was admitted to a renowned out-of-state university, which is an incredible accomplishment for any high school graduate. Unfortunately, her scholarship didn't even cover 10% of her tuition at this incredibly costly university. I was concerned about how they would handle the financial challenges of higher education because I was aware of them. Emily asked to meet me one day. Without much hesitation, I accepted, assuming it had something to do with the necessary house renovations. As we sat down in the house's living room, she began by expressing her gratitude for my generosity in providing her with a large portion of the rent. She went on to tell me how much she wanted Lily, her daughter, to go to the university of her dreams. But after calculating the costs, which included accommodation, tuition, and other charges, she found that it was too much for her to manage by herself. Even after applying for financial aid, researching scholarships, and taking a part-time job in addition to her full-time employment, it was still insufficient. Perhaps she was going to ask if she could postpone paying the rent for the month, which would have made sense, so I shook my head firmly in understanding. Rather, I was flabbergasted by Emily's astounding desire for me. She requested that I sell the house where she was residing. As she went on to explain that the property I owned and had rented out to her would bring in a healthy profit, enabling her to pay for her daughter's college education, I gave her a questioning glance. "Are you serious?" With a mixture of surprise and incredulity, I replied. "You want me to sell my property to pay for your daughter's college tuition?" Emily argued that it was her one chance to ensure her daughter's future, and her eyes begged me to do so. She said she was sure the entire property could pay for her daughter's college expenses because she had already had it evaluated. Since I couldn't possibly sell my house to pay for her daughter's tuition at a prestigious university, I asked her if she had gone insane. I informed her that I had sentimental attachment to this house and that I would not be selling it for nothing. Once more, Emily persisted, claiming that I could lend her the money and that her daughter would reimburse me after graduating. I knew how important a college education was, yet I refused to give in to her ridiculous demands. It was evident from listening to her entreaties that she was committed to finding a method to support her daughter's aspirations, even if it required proposing an absurd idea to an unfamiliar person. I calmly told Emily that I couldn't just give up the property because it was a big portion of my income. I should not be responsible for her daughter's tuition. I advised her to look into more cheap possibilities or ask family members for assistance if she was unable to pay for her daughter's tuition at the institution. Emily persisted in pressing the matter in spite of my attempts to persuade her to see the obvious, claiming that I was the only person who could assist and that selling my property and giving her the money wasn't a huge concern. I asked Emily not to come to me about this ever again, and when I realized it was not working, I left the property. I asked her to consider how ridiculous her request sounded and come up with an alternative. I had hoped that she would ultimately see her error, but Emily persisted throughout the following few weeks. The situation grew more intolerable as Emily's daughter was getting closer to starting college. Emily persuaded me daily to sell my property as quickly as possible, even though I denied it. She even protested by ceasing to pay her rent. As Emily persisted in her conviction that my property would solve her financial problems, our formerly cordial relationship deteriorated and our tension increased. She believed that my refusal endangered her daughter's future and was self-serving. However, because she was refusing to pay her rent, I was losing money. We had an unbreakable pact, so I told her that if she didn't comply, I would take the case to court. It was becoming more and more obvious that her demands were endless. When Emily began bringing other people into our argument, it was a tipping point. She spoke to her neighbors and friends, accusing me of being a callous landlord who would not assist a young girl in achieving her goals. She emphasized her position as a struggling single mother and informed them that although I was quite affluent, I would not lend her the money. Those she confided in sympathized with her story. Emily used social media to further her cause, posting on Facebook that she blamed me for her daughter's failure to go to college. Rumors soon began to spread throughout our area. People understood her predicament and believed that I could help but was purposefully refusing to. I couldn't help but feel alienated in my own neighborhood. At last, my wife made the decision to contact Emily in order to resolve the growing dispute. She thought that open communication would be a way to resolve the growing tension in the neighborhood. But Emily wasn't in the mood for a quiet conversation. She went on a rant right away, claiming that the only way she could ensure her daughter's future was for me, the landlord, to sell the house. My wife made sincere attempts to persuade Emily, but her conviction remained unwavering. She accused us of being self-centered and claimed that we had the money to pay for her daughter's college tuition. Emily persisted in pressuring my wife to comply with her requests, and the talk went on in a monotonous loop. Her message had a visible effect on the neighborhood and the local community, portraying me as a wealthy and callous landlord who would not assist a young girl in realizing her aspirations. We were viewed with suspicion by those neighbors who had previously been friends with us. They started to think that, although I was consciously refusing to do so out of selfishness, I did have the capacity to lessen her daughter's financial problems. Others who understood my background, my diligence, and the truth of my circumstances agreed with me and were equally horrified by Emily's bold request that I pay for it. They served as a reminder to me that I had to safeguard my assets and uphold the legacy I had worked so hard to establish. Every day, the community grew further polarized, with some people feeling sorry for Emily. I remained firm in my resolve to defend my property in the face of increasing pressure. I had worked hard and made sacrifices for years to earn it, and I wasn't about to give it up easily. Emily, meantime, kept stoking the fire by accusing me of being uncaring and taking advantage of her by letting her live for free. Her statements on social media grew more outspoken as she talked about her daughter's perseverance and the innumerable sacrifices she had made in order to become ready for college. Consequently, the argument progressed from a private dispute to a public discussion. My family was beginning to feel the effects of the accusations. As a result of their peers repeating the untrue things they had seen on social media about me, my children started to be bullied at school. Seeing how distressed they were by this circumstance was awful. I made the decision that it was time to act at that point. Since Emily was affecting my children, I had remained silent, believing that she would ultimately cease, but it was time to correct the record and stand up for my morals. I contacted a lawyer that focused on tenant-landlord disputes and property disputes. In order to stop Emily's defamatory efforts and preserve my reputation in the community, we quickly wrote a cease and desist letter. According to my lawyer, the cease and desist letter was the beginning of our legal struggle, and we would go all the way to court if Emily didn't change her mind. Emily was obviously shocked to receive the letter. She tried calling me on the phone, but I declined to take her calls. Then, before things got out of hand, she texted me to say she wanted to chat and make amends. She said we could have a conversation and that it was all a big misunderstanding. I responded by saying I was going to sue her. She was going to regret ever trying to play me, so I encouraged her to enjoy it and brace herself. Emily has been adamant that I cover her daughter's tuition, damaging our family's reputation in the town and online, so I know this will be a difficult battle. My attorney is already getting ready for the case by detailing all of the unfounded charges and the damage she has done to us over the past few months. Some of my family members advised me to give her a chance to resolve the matter as she is a single mother attempting to act in her child's best interests after learning that I was bringing her to court. So, Reddit, am I the jerk for taking the entitled mother to court rather than selling my home to cover her daughter's college expenses? Update. Emily sent a letter of her own, containing more defamatory remarks and threats, in response to our legal action. Despite being aware of her financial circumstances, she has accused me of charging exorbitant rent, which she claims prevented her from saving money for her daughter's schooling. Her willingness to deceive and go to such lengths to achieve her goals is astounding. I've already given her subsidized rent, so it's annoying to see her play the victim when her claims are unfounded. She is obviously attempting to take advantage of the situation, and I will not allow it to occur. Emily's determination to fight to the end is apparent. Although my attorney, Matthew, has reassured me that we have a solid case because her charges are unfounded, he has advised me to be ready for a drawn-out and taxing court process. I can't help but consider how rapidly things have gotten out of hand. I had no desire to find myself in a courtroom, particularly with someone who had previously occupied my land. However, there are instances when you must defend what is rightly yours and stand your ground. Even if Emily may have good reasons, I can't let her force me to sell my property. The future of my family is on the line, and I'm committed to seeing this through to the end, no matter how difficult it gets. Update 2. The legal process has formally started since my last report. It had been agonizingly painful to wait for the court date. Tension permeated the courtroom as both sides presented their cases and supporting documentation. Emily presented herself as a struggling mother who is committed to securing her daughter's future, accompanied by her lawyer. In a detailed account of financial difficulties, her lawyer emphasized how my property had been the last straw for her daughter's aspirations to enroll in a prominent out-of-state university. Emily's emotional statement was filled with emotions as she talked about the sacrifices she had made as a single mother, including the long hours she put in at work and her unshakable dedication to her daughter's achievement. She portrayed herself as a mother who had done everything she could, talking about her tenacious job hunts and multiple applications for financial aid and scholarships. Emily's lawyer persisted in portraying me as a rich, callous landlord who put money over a young girl's aspirations during the proceedings. They suggested that I had been aware of Emily's financial difficulties but had nevertheless taken advantage of her predicament by charging her exorbitant rent. Emily presented a family friend as a witness, claiming to have overheard a conversation between Emily and me in which I supposedly offered to sell the property to pay for her daughter's college education. This was the most shocking turn of events. When this flagrant untruth was told in court, I sat there in shock. Matthew, my lawyer, vigorously disputed this allegation, claiming that no such discussion had ever occurred. He made the deliberate decision to refute the witness's account. The family acquaintance who testified on the purported conversation was first subjected to cross-examination by Matthew. In order to determine the witness's memory's credibility, he asked a number of specific questions. In an attempt to uncover discrepancies or holes in their memory, Matthew inquired about the time, date, and place of the alleged conversation. The family friend found it difficult to respond with consistent information and was unable to provide any hard proof to back up their claim, such as emails or texts. Under examination, their testimony grew more and more dubious. Matthew provided evidence that directly refuted Emily's account, severely undermining the case's credibility. He presented documents of emails and texts that were sent back and forth between Emily and myself at the time the said agreement was allegedly made. These texts made it quite evident that she had never brought up the idea of selling the land to pay for her daughter's schooling. Rather, they proved that it was Emily who was always putting pressure on me to sell the house. Furthermore, according to testimony from a neighbor who shared a residence with Emily, Emily had been paying lower rent than any other renter in the neighborhood. To support this claim, my attorney retrieved receipts from other local tenants. Matthew continued by arguing that the neighbor's evidence and the lack of any written or electronic correspondence about the purported pledge Emily made called into question the veracity of the family friend's story. This testimony was inadmissible as hard proof. We then concentrated on demonstrating that Emily had purposefully gone to considerable measures to damage my reputation on social media, which had led to my kids being bullied. In a detailed account of Emily's communications and posts on social media, my lawyer claimed that I was a callous and uncaring landlord who did not encourage her daughter's aspirations. In order to win the community's sympathy and support, these posts were rife with emotional appeals and downright lies. We pointed out that these posts were purposefully written to present her as a struggling mother who was doing everything in her ability to ensure her daughter's future, but in actuality, she was using emotional blackmail to pressure me into selling my house. Matthew then displayed screen grabs of direct messages and comments left by people who had interacted with Emily's posts on social media. Because of the misleading information Emily provided, some of these local residents had developed a bad view of me. These remarks ranged from expressing empathy for her predicament to flatly accusing me of being a callous landlord taking advantage of her circumstances. Along with the social media data, we also included witness statements from my kids, who said that Emily's posts caused them to be bullied at school. They described how classmates harassed and name-called them after echoing the untrue statements they had heard about their father on social media. My lawyer contended that the bullying my kids experienced was directly related to Emily's unfounded charges on social media. Emily's purposefully false story had a negative impact on my family's welfare in addition to harming my reputation. This evidence-based presentation clearly illustrated how Emily's social media behavior affected my kids in real life. I continue to believe that justice will be done as the legal process progresses. The truth has been revealed and the untrue allegations against me have been exposed by the evidence that has been given thus far. In my opinion, the court will recognize the manipulation and provide a just resolution in this matter. Third update. We prevailed. The legal proceedings have made the past month a taxing one. Unexpected turns and twists have made it feel like a roller coaster ride. It became more and more obvious that Emily's allegations were unfounded as my attorney began to provide testimony and supporting documentation. When she introduced a family acquaintance who gave a bogus statement about a pledge I had never made, her attempt to control the event failed. The legitimacy of the witnesses' assertions is seriously called into question due to the absence of hard proof and discrepancies in their testimony. The court declared the result and decided in my favor after carefully reviewing all of the testimony and supporting documentation. I was quite relieved by this and thankful that the judge saw through all of the unfounded allegations. After being convicted of defamation, Emily was mandated to compensate me for the damage she had done to my reputation. This involved paying the past month's rent as well as any further penalties. Additionally, a restraining order was granted to stop Emily from speaking negatively about my family or me in the future. My conduct and my right to defend my property were upheld by this decision. I saw Emily seated next to her attorney, looking defeated, as the court case came to an end. As I looked at her daughter Lily, I couldn't help but think that her mother's conceit had ruined her hopes. Justice has been done, and this nightmare is now over. Everyone learned the value of standing up for themselves and not allowing the bold demands of others to undermine our moral convictions. Now that my home and our means of subsistence are safe, I can proceed with a fresh sense of confidence. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who has helped me along the way thus far. My family and I endured tremendous emotional strain and hardship, but in the end, the truth won out. Fourth update. 6 months have passed since my previous update. Emily has been successfully silenced by the restraining order since my court victory, and the damages she was required to pay for defamation offered some measure of comfort for the damage done to my reputation. I served Emily with an eviction notice, and she and her kid were forced to vacate. Even if their situation is still difficult, I realized I was no longer in charge of them. Although I felt a little sorry for her daughter's missed educational prospects, the truth was that Emily's bold request had placed their family in a challenging position. Everyone soon saw the full depth of Emily's lies after the court ordered her to remove her defamatory social media posts. When her daughter Lily unexpectedly contacted me to apologize, that was the last I heard from them. I had watched Lily grow up and she had always been a wonderful child, but I stopped communicating with them when her mother began making unfounded accusations against me. She wanted to contact me after her mother publicly lost the case, which startled me. She expressed sincere regret in her message for her mother's actions and the resulting difficulties for her family. She acknowledged that her mother's actions had harmed both of our families and thanked us for our understanding and patience during the process. Lily also mentioned that they had moved to a more reasonably priced neighborhood and that she had made the decision to continue her study at a nearby college. She told me she had begged her mother to back off in a conversation she had with her following the conclusion of the judicial proceedings. "I'm determined to secure my own future without making any bold demands," Lily said. Because of the bogus claims made by her entitled mother, I felt sorry for her at such a young age. I told her that it was great that she was taking charge of her own life and that everyone deserves a second chance. I told her that the past was behind us and wished her well in her studies. Our lives have adapted to a new normal since Emily and her daughter left my property. The burden of the unfounded allegations and the harassment our kids endured has been removed. We intervened by getting in touch with our kids' school and addressing the bullying they experienced. At last, our family may now proceed in harmony. I opened my marriage, lost my husband, and now I'm fighting to win him back. Is it too late? I'm here to seek guidance on how to save my remaining marriage. Let me begin by stating that I have been with my spouse for 7 years, and we have been married for 5 of those years. I'll call us Skylar and James for privacy's sake. In our second year of community college, we got to know one another. James went on to receive a 4-year degree in business administration from a university that provides remote programs at the community college, while I obtained a 2-year degree in office management. In the present, James is 27 and I am 26, and we intended to have a child later this year. Having 4 children, ideally 2 boys and 2 girls, was our desire. Both of our families loved us, and we had a really happy marriage. This is where I made a big error. I formed a relationship with a delivery driver for one of the 3 major delivery companies, which some could refer to as a work-husband relationship. To keep things private, I'll call him Jaden. Jaden has been delivering to my office for about 2 years at the age of 25 and unmarried. Unquestionably, we clicked right away. It wasn't romantic, but there was a spark that pulled me to him. Every time he made a delivery, we would converse for at least 10 minutes. I started to look forward to seeing him and always made sure to be honest with him when he showed up. Our chat went farther than normal one day. Jaden said he wanted to ask me a personal question. He said he didn't want to offend me or endanger our business relationship because it was so personal. I encouraged him to ask and reassured him that was okay. "I feel a very strong attraction to you and wondered if you felt it too," he admitted at that point. His audacity shocked and embarrassed me. After giving it some thought, I confessed that I felt it as well. Jaden continued by saying that if I weren't married, he would have asked me out. The conversation ended when I thanked him for the compliment. That was the last of him. Our conversations grew awkward and short throughout the course of the following week. I was so ashamed that I thought I had gone too far. Even as James and I continued to enjoy our married lives at home, the guilt persisted. To be clear, I have always been totally happy with James as a husband, friend, and lover. I thought he would have said the same of me at the time. For me, he was ideal. Nevertheless, I mistakenly started to dream about having both my devoted husband and a relationship with Jaden that went beyond business chats. Later, I discovered that this is frequently called eating cake. Intrigued, I began reading up on open marriages and polyamory. I initially thought the concept was nasty and ridiculous. I was certain James would not consent, and even if he did, I wanted to prevent our marriage from being harmed and our family from becoming estranged. Weeks went by, and my married life was still great. But there were still thoughts of Jaden. I came upon a blog article by a lady in an open marriage with the heading "It Doesn't Hurt to Ask." When I went back to the subject, she talked about how she sought a relationship with a man she met while volunteering, even though she loved her spouse. After 2 years of suppressing her emotions, she finally asked her husband on a lengthy drive. He was interested, which surprised her. 4 years later, they apparently had a stronger, happier connection after opening their marriage and finding other lovers. Because it mirrored exactly what I wanted but was too scared to question James about, her tale struck a chord with me. Then, one Sunday morning, I made the decision to bring up the topic as we were relaxing at home, conversing and using our phones to browse the internet. "I just read this online post about open marriages," I said immediately to James. "How do you feel about them?" "Are you talking about couples sleeping with other people?" he questioned, glancing at me. I reaffirmed and inquired about his thoughts once again. In response, James said he found it repulsive and added that if someone wanted to sleep together, they should simply seek a divorce. I said, "It's really becoming popular here in the US and other Western countries," in an attempt to defuse the situation, but his expression made it obvious that he was disgusted by the subject, so I quickly changed the topic. His response made me decide that I would never bring it up again since I didn't want to endanger our marriage, which I thought was fantastic. A few weeks later, James and I were snuggling in bed together, enjoying the glow from a fantastic evening. He remarked abruptly, "Who did you have in mind when you brought up open marriages last week?" As I lay on his chest, unable to see his face, I went cold. I gently lifted my head to look at him, and a pit developed in my stomach. "What are you discussing? What are you saying?" I stumbled. James clarified that he has read studies indicating that a woman's reference to an open relationship with her boyfriend frequently indicates that she has previously cheated or has another lover in mind. I was shocked by what he said. In fact, I was shaken to my very core. James remarked, "I know you too well," after realizing the effect of his comments. "Just be honest, I can tell you're hiding something." I could have stopped there, but instead I remained silent, turned my head away, and finally told him, "I have never cheated on you and would never do so. Rather, I acknowledged that there was someone at work I may think about if we ever discussed an open marriage." "Tell me about this work friend," James insisted. I reluctantly started to describe Jaden and our encounters, including the moment he revealed his emotions for me. I didn't reveal, though, that I felt the same way about it. I was frightened by James's next statement. "You know, technically, you've already cheated on me." I retaliated defensively, saying, "I haven't cheated." "Your relationship with this Jaden guy is what's known as an emotional affair," James retorted. James gave me an explanation of the term because I had never heard it before. I listened in frustration as he explained the workings of emotional affairs. James finally proposed that we end the conversation since he needed to go to bed because he had an early start the next day. I couldn't fall asleep, but he did. Rather, I picked up my phone and began looking up emotional affairs. What James had asserted was supported by article after article. My relationship with Jaden was more than simply an emotional one. It was a full-fledged one. I was overcome with guilt. I felt like I had let my hubby down. I went downstairs to make myself some tea because I couldn't sleep, and at around 4 in the morning, I fell asleep on the couch. James kissed me awake at 6:45 a.m. "I'm heading out for work," he declared. As usual, I kissed him back and told him I loved him, but this time, with guilt weighing heavily on my mind, I made it clearer than ever. "You should start your day. It's almost 7 a.m. After making love for a few days, we were laying in bed once more when James abruptly remarked, "If you truly want to, I'd be willing to try an open marriage." "Why are you bringing this up now?" I questioned, stunned. He clarified that he had been considering our earlier chats and reasoned that if it was something we wanted, we should attempt it while we were still young. I pledged never to endanger our marriage or our love, but I did show cautious attention. I told him, "You are the most significant person in my life. If our love bond is strong, it will withstand infidelity," James retorted. James didn't respond when I retorted, "A mutual open relationship wouldn't be considered infidelity because we'd both agree to it. Consider our marriage open, starting right now," he remarked instead. Surprised again, I told him to calm down and that we needed to set ground rules. He made the following specifics. We had to let people know ahead of time who we would be sleeping with and when. We had to later, without going into graphic detail, tell each other about the incident. There are no exceptions to the rule that all types of closeness must be protected. I accepted his conditions and suggested a few more. We would maintain the privacy of our open marriage. We would pledge to stay together and prevent these adulterous affairs from ruining our marriage. James declared that he was unable to accept either of these terms. He refused to talk about it more and just said he didn't and wouldn't agree to them when I questioned why. I was worried since this felt totally out of character for James. I snuggled up to him in spite of my discomfort, and we dozed off. I became uncomfortable with the idea of an open relationship throughout the course of the following month because I thought James might be up to something. I chose not to pursue it and concentrated on leading a typical life. I avoided talking to Jaden at work during this time, limiting our exchanges to trivial subjects like the weather or our respective workloads. Then, one day, Jaden asked me if something was wrong and said he truly missed our discussions. I explained to him that I didn't have much time to talk because I was so busy at work and at home. I contemplated whether or not to disclose my open marriage to him. I eventually made the decision to tell him how I wish I could take that choice back. I asked Jaden to join me for a drink after work because it didn't seem acceptable to have such a chat there. He concurred. We got together at a neighborhood tavern with a terrace outside, which was ideal for the warm early spring weather. I asked him directly whether he would be interested in a relationship after telling him about my newly announced marriage. Without hesitation, he said yes. Although he respected my boundaries, Jaden acknowledged that he had been waiting for me to change his mind and that he had been dreaming about me for months. We talked flirtatiously most of the time that night. We decided to have our first romantic meeting at his flat the next day. I made it clear that I had to depart by 6:30 p.m. to go back home to James, who was still my top priority. I came home that evening and made James a delicious meal. After supper, I told him about my conversation and meeting with Jaden earlier in the day, and that we had planned to meet at his apartment the next day, assuming James was still okay with us being married in an open marriage. Despite appearing surprised, James answered, "Oh, yes, all right, so you're meeting him tomorrow?" As my top focus was him and our relationship, I reassured him that we could still cancel if he so desired. "No," he insisted. "Let's do this." In contrast to our typical embraces, I felt hardness and remoteness in his. I blamed it on nerves. We didn't speak much that night as I concentrated on my own work and James worked in his office. I tried to start an intimate conversation with him before we went to bed, but he stated he was too exhausted and wanted to relax. When I woke up the following morning, James had already left, leaving a text message saying that he had neglected to mention an early meeting. He also mentioned that he would see me that evening. This was not like him, but I brushed it off and went about my day as usual, dressing and going to work. I picked a really lovely clothing that day because I knew I was going out with Jaden after work. I texted James throughout the day, but he didn't reply. I contemplated calling off our date with Jaden, but I now regret not doing so. I got a text from James at 4:17 p.m. He promised to meet me that evening and wrote that he loved me. I was relieved by this, and I saw it as his approval to proceed. I'll get right to the point. When Jaden and I first met, our private moment was fierce. There was clearly no love involved, and it wasn't quite as satisfying as it is with James. But because of the unlawful nature of what we were doing and the pure passion, it was physically satisfying. After an hour and a half I left Jaden's residence and got home shortly after 6:40 p.m. I was shocked to see that James wasn't home yet. I was relieved since it allowed me to take a shower and wash my clothes to get rid of the smell of Jaden's perfume. Despite my physical sense of fulfillment, I was overcome with regret, guilt, and shame. I felt soiled, as though I had violated every fundamental principle in my marriage. I was really anxious, and it was a mental tug of war. I made a short but beautiful meal and put candles to create a romantic atmosphere since I was determined to make it up to James. I wanted him to understand how much I loved him and that the sexual relationship with Jaden was meaningless because it was only physical and couldn't compare to the happiness and love I had with James. My hope was that we would make love at the end of the evening. James was still away from home around 7:30 p.m. When I tried to call him, the call went straight to voicemail. I texted him to let him know that dinner was ready when I got home. When I didn't hear back by 8:50 p.m., I became concerned. I kept phoning and texting him, leaving messages, but I never heard back. At last, at approximately 9:30 p.m., James texted me, saying, "Don't wait up. I will arrive home late." He didn't respond when I texted him back to inquire where he was and who he was with. I finally dozed off after midnight, emotionally and physically spent. The sound of the shower running in the guest bathroom awakened me up. When I went up to look, I saw that the door was locked, which was completely out of character for James. He did not answer when I knocked. After 10 minutes, James came out, wrapped in a towel, and said nonchalantly, "Hey, how was your night?" After I assured him that everything was okay, he asked me straight out, "Did you have sex with Jaden?" I winced at his directness and urged him to use a different wording. I reluctantly said, "Yes, Jaden and I were together." I then inquired about his whereabouts. James confessed that he had gone out dancing and spent the night at multiple pubs. Because I could smell perfume on his clothing, I was suspicious and questioned who he was with. Upon pressing, I inquired, "Who is she?" He said that he didn't have to identify her because they hadn't shared a bed. Although I was astonished by what he said, I was more offended by his tone and language. James's angry remarks caused me great concern, although he never used profanity when addressing me. I then questioned him about why he had taken a shower in the guest bathroom. He told me icily that until I had completed 2 STD tests, he would be utilizing the guest bathroom and bedroom. I was devastated by his statements. "This wasn't part of our rules," I objected. I ensured that Jaden wore protection during all of our activities. "Have you never heard of oral HPV or herpes?" James shot back. "Till you're cleared, I won't come within 6 feet of you." Think of this as my personal take on social distancing. I informed James that I wanted to end our marriage right now since I was so distraught and crying. I cried, "This is the last thing I wanted to happen." "No way," James shot back. "I'll have my turn now that you've taken yours." James only stated that he was going to bed since he had an early meeting and needed rest, even though I started crying more. I sobbed on the couch for the majority of the night before dozing off. When I opened my eyes, James was gone. I tried contacting him during the day, but he didn't pick up. He texted me, saying, "Don't wait up for me." I left voicemails and texted, but nobody answered. I felt like I was going crazy because I knew I had probably ruined my marriage. I didn't see Jaden at work that day as there were no deliveries. But I gave him a call at 4:30 p.m. and inquired about our possibility of meeting that night. He acknowledged that I sounded agitated. I told him I wanted to break up with him when we first met, acknowledging that it was a big mistake. I admitted that I just wanted my husband because I loved him. He understood, and all he wanted for was one more connection. Other than that, he would only ever speak to me at work. I consented, and our brief and unremarkable hookup lasted less than 10 minutes and consisted just of a basic posture. Jaden later said to me, "That was awful." I apologized, acknowledging that the entire affair was a tremendous error and not his fault. "You just laid there like a tree trunk." After getting ready and giving him one last hug, I turned to depart. I asked Jaden, bewildered, what he meant when he said, "I'll never understand women like you," before I left, but he just muttered, "Nothing, no comment," with a look of utter hatred on his face. I hurried off, sobbing all the way home. How was I able to be so foolish? I had ruined my marriage for nothing at all. I felt filthy once more and thought I was the world's most foolish person. It was 1 a.m. when James finally returned home. That evening, I was tired of knowing that I was the only one responsible for ruining my life. James did the same thing on Friday, leaving before I woke up and texting me, "Don't wait up for me." The coldness and distance between us broke my heart. I missed our mornings, evenings, and weekends together, cooking together, going on walks after supper, and chatting about random topics. I sorely missed it when it was all gone. I sent James a text message requesting to speak with him the following morning. "All right," he said, "as long as it's first thing." I asked him where he was going, but he didn't respond. "I'm leaving for the day." It was 1:30 a.m. when he returned home. I just lay in bed and sobbed without saying anything. Without saying anything, James immediately went to bed after taking another shower in the guest bathroom. The following morning, I got up early to await his arrival. He entered the kitchen, poured himself some orange juice, and sat at the table, looking at his phone, at 7 in the morning. The atmosphere was lifeless and icy. I approached him, sat on his knee, and whispered, "Look at me." He looked away, but I gently took hold of his face and met his brown eyes. I said, "You have my undying love. I really apologize for the poor choice I made, not a mistake, but a decision. I will stop at nothing to win back your love and trust." James remained silent while staring at me as if I were crazy. I pleaded, "Are you still in love with me?" He said, "I'm not sure." I sobbed and begged, "I can put this right." He said, "I don't think you can." I said in a fit of rage, "You orchestrated everything. Didn't you set me up for divorce?" James denied it but acknowledged that, based on what he had read, he realized our relationship was probably finished the moment I raised the subject of an open marriage. I questioned him, "Why didn't you just tell me to stop talking to Jaden?" I was devastated by his response. You can't make someone be faithful. You are either monogamous or not, and it is clear that you are not. He just got up and stated he was going, despite my entreaties not to ruin our marriage. He said he would return after midnight when I questioned where he was going. Tomorrow is Easter Sunday, I told him. Our scheduled departure time is 7 a.m. Go visit the home of my parents. We spend every holiday with them because they adore you. James replied icily, I'm not going. What am I supposed to tell my parents? I begged him to come, shocked. Tell them the truth, he added with a shrug. He packed a gym bag and left the house without saying anything more, despite my repeated pleas for him to stay. I feel totally deflated and ruined inside. I would appreciate any guidance or recommendations regarding actions I can take to keep my marriage intact. I'm particularly interested in hearing from those who have had similar situations with open marriages and whether or not a couple can move over such a betrayal. After an open relationship, have you been able to successfully reconcile? I appreciate you hearing my tale. I'm going to bed now so I can spend the rest of the day crying. First update. I would want to express my gratitude to everyone who replied with comments and encouragement. I was able to get through the past several days because to it. Many individuals properly chastised me and called me derogatory things, but I deserve it, and I also value your opinions. 2 of the worst days of my life have been Easter Sunday and today. When I pulled up to my parents' house, they asked me right away, "Where's James?" I lied to them and said he couldn't make it because of an emergency at work. I didn't want the family get-together to be disturbed. At first, my family believed my tale, but as the day wore on, they began to suspect that I wasn't phoning or texting my husband as I usually do. I sent multiple phony texts and claimed to have responses from James, assuring everyone he was still busy at work and would give me a call tomorrow in order to allay their suspicions. To be honest, he never texted or called, not even to see whether I had made it safely. I was devastated by this. On Monday, I had intended to spend the night at my parents' house and discuss our marital issues with them. I was afraid they would be angry and despise me if I did this. I told them this morning, and everything went exactly as I had expected. They shouted at me, called me horrible names, and said that I wasn't brought up this way. When my sister was summoned over, she started to lash out at me as well. I told them I realized what I had done was horrible and sobbed. I promised them that I had grown from the experience and would never do the same thing again. I informed them that regaining James' love and trust would be my only priority going forward. Ultimately, they told me they loved me and would pray for our marriage to be saved, even if they were furious with me. On Monday night, I took a car home. I texted and called James during the day, but he didn't respond. He had gone to Florida to see his parents and would be back on Sunday, according to a note on the counter when I got home. We had arranged to go there together in early May, so I felt terrible. Now that strategy is shattered because of me. I despise myself. For now, that's all I have to say. I'm simply so unhappy and dejected. The fact that I'm no longer crying frightens me. Tears no longer seem worth shedding because of the depth of my hurt and regret. Second update. I didn't intend to publish again for almost a year, but I decided to offer an update because the community showed such a great deal of interest. I have some good news as well as some negative news. The first piece of terrible news is that I'm divorced. Back in December, it was decided. James ultimately came to the conclusion that he couldn't stay married to me once I started seeing another man. He claimed that he was ashamed to be seen with me in public and that he would never be able to trust me again. He claimed that he regained his masculinity after the divorce. I disagree. He never lost his manhood, and only our families are aware of my brief relationship with Jaden. Well, anything. The good news, no, the amazing news, is that last month James and I resumed our dating life. It's been great since Valentine's Day, when we reconnected. Our passion level is unmatched, much higher than when we initially started dating 7 years ago, but we only see each other when he wants to, which has been around once a week. James has stated unequivocally that this is merely a physical matter and that we will never again be a couple, get married, or live together. I'll take what I can get, but I'm not really comfortable with this. I want to get James back. I would like to have his children if I am unable to achieve that. I wouldn't baby trap him, so don't get me wrong. All I want is to have kids with him. Without getting married, I've considered how we could divide custody and still work things out. I don't want children with anybody else, even though I know it seems weird, but I love him. I understand that doing this would probably put any future relationships I might have with other men in jeopardy, but I only want James. That's all I have to say for now, and until something significant occurs, I doubt I'll post again. However, I would adore hearing your thoughts about my predicament. Do you believe that my decision to date James is insane? Is it better for me to go on and find someone else to start a family with? P.S. Jaden has never been an option. I simply made a poor choice with him, and I will never do it again. Thank you.